All right, good evening, everyone. The Tuesday, July 7th regular meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council will come to order. Rebecca, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Casisa.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Ravazio.
Here.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart.
Here.
Mayor Beckman.
Here. Thank you. Please join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. It is open time for public comment now. This is a time for any members of the public who wish to speak on an item that's not on the agenda to do so. Members of the public may raise their hand via Zoom, or they may email their comment to publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Speakers will be given 3 minutes apiece. We will start with James Jordan.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is James Jordan. I live at 42 Mohawk Avenue, Corte Madera. And I have two topics tonight briefly. One is when I look on the town website to try to find email addresses for staff, I click on the blue link that says send an email, and it opens a window, a blue window, and it says choose the email account do you want to use. But I don't see any email accounts listed, and so I reach a dead end there. And I think a good idea would be, like it used to be, if you had the actual email address of the staff member so that I could look at it and I could just type that into my email without going through this detour. And I think maybe other people have had that problem too. My main comments, however, concern dogs in the town park. And I think there's a problem with dogs in the town park that appears to be contributed to by the new dog park. There's been a big increase from my observation of dogs in the park. Some are running off leash. Some of their feces is not being picked up. Our house backs onto the town park, separated by the low canal. So we have a close view of the park. And surprisingly, some people may tend to misbehave more in that area because they think they're out of view of the parking areas and walking paths. So I see a lot of dogs running along the canal off leash, and think that maybe a sign could be placed at the new dog park reminding people that when the dogs are in the other parts of the park that they're required to be on leashes. And then last few weeks, a new development, and that is a couple or more people who have retriever type dogs like a black lab come behind our house, sometimes early in the morning, and they repeatedly throw a ball into the canal, and the dog runs and jumps in and gets it, brings it back out, and the owner is kind of calling commands to them. And so sometimes maybe we and our neighbors might wake up to the sound of big splashes and owners shouting commands to their dogs. And in my opinion, that disturbs the wildlife that lives around the low canal, including the ducks and egrets. I have watched generations of ducks live along that canal. Their refuge from human activities in the park is in the water, but now that's being disturbed by the dogs in the water. I think that dogs possibly should be restricted from entering the canals and the pond that are near the town park. I'm aware of the town code sections regarding dogs in the park, like 804.020, 025, 028, ordinance number 984. Is there a source for other rules in the town park? I see that the town council by resolution can grant permission for dogs to be in the park on leashes, but I can't seem to find that actual resolution. And my question is, who enforces the rules? If a resident has a complaint, who do they contact? Is it the code enforcement officer in the building department, or a staff department in the parks department?
Thank you, James. That would be your 3 minutes.
Thank you for considering my comments and for your service to our fine town.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Beckman. I just wanted to address the fact that Mr. Jordan sent an email to publiccomment@tcmmail.org. So I was going to read it if he hadn't spoken, but it will be uploaded to the website for the remainder of his comments that he didn't get to make. And since I did about a half an hour ago, I started trying to make those updates that he recommended to the website. So hopefully we'll see some changes shortly.
Thank you.
Great.
Rebecca,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Rebecca, can you forward that email to me as well? And James, Mr. Jordan, I'll follow up with you in the morning and answer your questions. I'll give you an update.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you, James. We'll move on to Roy Wolford. Unmute him here.
Unmute. Okay.
There you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. Wanted to address the liquid amber tree issue. It's a nuisance. It's a safety and health hazard. It needs to be put on the undesirable species list. I've talked with town staff over the last 3 years, various people, sent emails. I've documented very heavily back in early March. Each council member received actually 3 emails from me. There was the number of emails were due to the number of photos that were in each one of the emails. And I think I clearly documented the issue that these liquid amber trees, and they've been a nuisance for over 4 decades. We've removed ours back in the mid-90s. It tore up the sidewalks. The town at the time that the sidewalks were being torn up actually took care of the sidewalks. They passed ordinance in '89 after the earthquakes hit and broke a whole bunch of sidewalk. So these liquid ambers have broken concrete structure, the sidewalks, the gutters, the curbs, the asphalt. They've made Pacific Queen and Flying Cloud Passage look like a war zone. So something needs to be done with these things. I don't know what it's going to take for the town to take action. I hope it's not an adult that gets hurt. So 1 in 4 Americans age 65 plus falls each year. Every 11 seconds, an older adult is treated in an emergency room for a fall. Every 19 minutes, an older adult dies from a fall. Falls are the leading cause of fatal injuries and the most common cause of non-fatal trauma-related hospital admissions among older adults. Now, the town has an opportunity tonight. I understand there's an ordinance that's being considered, and they're going to modify the municipal code related to trees, and that's all for the fire trees. People are, I've talked to the staff recently or communicated via email, and I was told that, well, geez, we're trying to come up with a different program. People like the liquid ambers. Liquid ambers are not only busting up the structure, but I've written before, their seed pods drop all over the place. They're tripping hazards. Their leaves in the wintertime, the property owners don't clean them up. With the water, they get really slick. I guess, what do I need to do? Do I need to ask that the consent calendar item 4C be pulled for consideration, and hopefully not like the last time I talked, town council members actually deliberate what's going on with the ordinance and make sure that the liquid amber tree is inserted in this current ordinance and becomes part of the municipal code, that it is an undesirable species. What needs to be done? Please tell me.
Okay, thank you, Roy.
Mr. Mayor, can we talk about this when we address the issue that is on the agenda?
Yeah, I believe staff was planning on pulling 4C anyway, so we can discuss that at that time. Thank you, Roy. We're going to move on to Lucinda Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to compliment Mr. Mayor and town council or town manager Todd and Rebecca for their participation in the Tuesday chats with the community. It's been very nice, and those of us that have attended have learned a lot. I know that there's going to be some decisions about frequency and timing and so forth, but I just want to thank you very much for your participation, for setting it up, and for conducting it for us to interact with town staff. Thank you very much for your time, energies, and your input.
Thank you, Lucinda. Much appreciated. We don't have any other hands up for open time right now. Rebecca, are there any comments for open time submitted to publiccomment@tcmmail.org?
No additional emails are received.
Alrighty, then we will go ahead and close open time and move on to item 3, which is presentations. And we have one presentation from Ashley Howe about a proclamation in support of Parks Make Life Better Month. You're muted.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ashley Howe. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director as of March 17th. I'm also an active leader in the California Parks and Recreation Society and serve as the current president of the Development and Operations section. CPRS is a nonprofit, professional, and public interest organization founded in 1946 with over 4,000 members. The California Parks and Recreation Society's mission is to advance the parks and recreation profession through education, networking, resources, and advocacy, and CPRS members are united in their commitment to improving people's lives. CPRS introduced Parks Makes Life Better in 2010 as a brand promise and slogan. The campaign serves to raise awareness of the benefits of parks and recreation throughout California and to raise the status of parks and recreation as an essential community service. July is celebrated by the California Parks and Recreation Society as well as the National Recreation and Parks Association, as it typically celebrates our programs, camps, and events in full swing. This year may be different, but for our structured activities, but I'm confident that we've all experienced an appreciation for our environment, our green spaces, and the desire to recreate during the shelter-in-place order. Our Parks and Recreation staff asked that Town Council proclaim July as Parks Make Life Better Month, and we hope that you enjoy the July calendar of activities that we've put together and outlined for different engagement opportunities. And we hope that everyone shares their favorite photos with us on Facebook if you haven't already done so. So first, I'd like to read the proclamation. So for the Town of Corte Madera, proclamation in support of Parks Make Life Better Month, whereas the Parks and Recreation promotes physical and educational and mental health awareness through organized and self-directed fitness, play, and activity, and whereas Parks and Recreation supports the economic vitality of communities by providing frontline jobs, childcare for the essential workforce, and promoting community revitalization. And whereas Parks and Recreation creates memorable experiences through engaging virtual and physically distant programs, dynamic online events, and new learning opportunities designed to keep families active while staying at home orders are in place and beyond. And whereas Parks and Recreation fosters social cohesiveness in communities by celebrating diversity, providing space to come together peacefully, modeling compassion, promoting social equity, connecting social networks, and ensuring all people have access to its benefits. And whereas Parks and Recreation supports human development and endless learning opportunities that foster social, intellectual, and physical and emotional growth in people of all ages and abilities. And whereas Park Recreation strengthens community identity by providing facilities and services that reflect and celebrate community character, heritage, culture, history, aesthetics, and landscape. And whereas Parks and Recreation facilitates community problem and issue resolution by providing safe spaces to come together peacefully and facilitating conversations and services in order that our communities may heal both physically and emotionally. And whereas Parks and Recreation sustains and stewards our national resources by protecting habitats and open space, connecting people to nature, and promoting the ecological function of parkland. And whereas Parks and Recreation supports safe, vibrant, attractive, progressive communities that make life better through positive alternatives offered in their recreational opportunities. And whereas the California Parks and Recreation Society has released a statewide public awareness campaign, Parks Make Life Better, to inform citizens of the many benefits of utilizing parks, facilities, programs, and services. Now, therefore, be resolved that the citizens of California recognize the importance of access to local parks, trails, and open spaces and facilities for health, wellness, and development, inspiration, and safety of all Californians. And be it further resolved that we declare the month of July 2020 as Parks Make Life Better Month.
Thank you, Ashley. And the proclamation ends. Now, therefore, I, Eli Beckman, Mayor of the Town of Corte Madera, do hereby proclaim the month of July 2020 to be Parks Make Life Better Month in the Town of Corte Madera, and urge all residents of our community to personally adopt the spirit of Parks and Recreation. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the Town of Corte Madera to be affixed this 7th day of July 2020. And here's the proclamation for all to see. Maybe backwards for you guys. Rebecca, remind me, do we vote on this? Okay, well then, great. I will sign that, and that will be that. Thank you, Ashley. Much appreciated. Yeah, David?
Okay, can I just say that, Ashley, this is my first opportunity to sincerely welcome you and see what kinds of things you're directly participating in and contributing to our town, since it was only minutes after you arrived amongst us that we had the shelter in place put in place. But you are absolutely most welcome, and I've heard wonderful things about your work so far. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did any other council members want to comment? And also, Teresa, should we take public comment on this? Okay, great. All right, we'll do public comment first then. So let's open this up for public comments on our Parks Make Life Better Month proclamation. If anybody would like to comment on this, please raise your hand through Zoom or email your comment to publiccomment@tcmmail.org. We'll give everyone a second here to go ahead and raise their hands if they wish to. And we're not seeing any hands go up, so I'll close public comment and bring it back to the council if anybody has any further comments to make. Yeah, Fred?
Yeah, I just want to echo some of Dave's comments. I've had the opportunity to meet with Ashley and work on various things, including the dog park. Great improvement since, I want to say, March 17th or so. And the other thing I'm really impressed with is a total shift from do the shelter in place as far as going virtual, and a great improvement on the website. So I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you, Councilmember Cassis.
Thank you, Fred. Any other comments from council members? All right, then I'm going to sign this right now. All right, and there it is. So proclaimed.
Thank you very much. Rebecca, would you mind showing the July calendar just as an example? It's located on our website as well and in the Friday newsletter. And we hope that it's just the beginning of years to come with nice, fun engagement opportunities for everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashley. Fantastic work to you and your staff.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, that concludes our presentation. We will move on to the consent calendar. These are items that are routine or do not require any further discussion and will be approved by a single motion. Would any council members like to pull any consent calendar items? Yeah, Bob?
Yeah, can we pull 4C?
Sure thing. Anyone else? And then I believe staff wanted to pull an additional item.
Item 4F, please.
Okay, great. Would any members of the public like to pull any consent calendar items besides 4C or 4F? And we will offer also an opportunity for members of the public to comment on the consent calendar. And I believe we'll have a separate opportunity to comment on 4C and 4F now that they've been pulled. So let's start with, would any members of the public like to pull an additional item? If so, please raise your hand. We're not seeing any hands. So let's go ahead and take a motion on the balance of the consent calendar, and then we'll do 4C and 4F separately.
I'd like to move that we pass the rest of the consent calendar for A through 4I, with the exception of 4C and 4F.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Rebecca, can we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazia?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes. Thank you. All right, let's move on to 4C. Let's begin with council questions on item 4C.
Yes.
Yeah, Bob.
I have one. I would just like, I've been talking to staff about this, and I would just like staff to comment on this as it pertains to liquid ambers. I know that they've been working about this, and I think that would help move things along if we just went straight to that.
Sure, thank you.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So I'm going to ask Chief Martin and Adam Wolf, our planning and building director, to jump in because they're the experts specific to this. But what I'll tell you, my part on this as the manager, we've had much discussion. I really appreciate Roy's comments. I'll tell you that the community does not necessarily share that feeling. You know, if you think about, look at Tamalpais Drive and the liquid ambers that we have, down Tamalpais Drive. And so we do agree that trees in general are causing problems to our sidewalks. And so one of the things So when you step back a little bit, I don't think it's what you're going to hear from staff and the experts, because I'm not one, but what you're going to hear from them, Mr. Mayor and Council, is that this ordinance isn't appropriate for the conversation of liquid ambers. But where I think it is appropriate, staff is going to come back to you with an item later in this year. It's already in the budget. There's a placeholder for $200,000. What we're doing with through Public Works in our community, our neighborhoods, is we're evaluating our sidewalks. And then through that, we're coordinating with our neighborhoods to basically replace the sidewalk squares. You know, sidewalks are the responsibility of residents, but exactly how we consider like the sewer laterals, we're looking at, you know, sharing costs with them and helping them replace those sidewalk squares that need to be replaced. And at the same time, when we identify a neighborhood for that project, we are looking at streamlining the process to what Roy's talking about, of saying, okay, we're going to do these 5 blocks. We're going to replace 200 squares. We have 20 trees that are causing damage to the sidewalks. Some of those are going to be liquid ambers. And then, so how do we streamline that in one arborist report to be able to remove those trees, but also how do we replace them? You know, do we replace them in the same kind of the devil's, area that we call on the sidewalks, or do we do it farther back onto, into the residents' parcel? And so there's some conversations to be had at the council level. And I think when we talk about liquid ambers, that will be the agenda item appropriate for this conversation. So I just want you to know that item is coming your way in the coming months. There's a placeholder in the budget. We're taking it serious. We identify that our sidewalks are a huge risk to our, as we replace our infrastructure. And so we're moving forward with that. And I'm not sure that it's appropriate for this ordinance and this conversation, but I'll just ask our fire chief to jump in here and just specifically speak to that for you and answer any questions.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having me. Members of the public, yeah, I believe this ordinance that we're bringing forward to you today is primarily dealing with our primary and secondary evacuation routes in the event of trying to remove flammable and hazardous vegetation that could potentially impede the residents trying to evacuate. We didn't necessarily look at the liquid amber similar to the town manager, Todd Cosmano, mentioned, because they are not really necessarily looked at as fire-prone trees or fire hazardous trees. And I believe this ordinance that we're bringing forward is primarily focusing on the fire-prone trees and being able to streamline the process for both staff and the public to be able to mitigate some of those hazards.
Thank you.
I can just add a little bit to that. I think it's important to understand what it means to go on this undesirable species list. If a tree is on this undesirable species list, that means that a tree of any size does not need a permit to be removed. It also means that the town would have no ability to, that means there's no noticing, no ability for the public to comment on whether that should be removed or not. And then I think importantly, there's also no ability for town staff to require any tree replacement. So those are important factors just in consideration of why, whether you put one of those trees on the list or not. And I think another point to raise, I think the tree ordinance that we currently have does clearly recognize that there are certain instances in which it may be very appropriate to remove a tree such as that is causing damage to a sidewalk or other infrastructure or property and what have you. And those are maybe large trees, and they should, I think the tree ordinance recognizes that those trees could be removed, but it just outlines a process to do so that allows for public noticing and comment. And I think the one area, and Todd mentioned it, that I think we're looking at to help specifically in Mariner Cove areas and some of those where there's street trees, is how do you, sometimes we request justification from an arborist that tree has to come out, there's no other ways to save the tree. I think we're looking at ways in which we can help at least take care of that aspect of the review, so that's not a cost for the homeowners who may be essentially trying to, make a safe public sidewalk area outside their home. So, that's some of the consideration. I think the tree ordinance was also put in place because it recognizes some significant benefits that trees provide, in general, and that we should have a process that really at least considers and evaluates whether they actually need to be removed, or so there's some other ways to actually deal with them. So that's my 2 cents, but I think Todd covered it pretty well.
Great. Well, thank you to the three of you. Look forward to that discussion happening in the future. That's, I think we all agree, an important topic. Are there any other council questions? And if not, we'll open this up to public comment. Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, just one quick question. Todd, do you have more of a definite time frame? I know you mentioned like a couple of months, but are you looking at like, I'm trying to just nail it down a little bit more so there's some light at the end of the tunnel for people. Are you looking at September, October?
Yeah.
Is there more of a definite time frame?
Yeah, so it's on this, it'll be in 2020. We're looking at September, October, probably October.
Okay.
And again, one of the things is we are coordinating with a specific community neighborhood on the Bayside. And so that's where this conversation really focused. And so we need to just as staff circle back to those residents to see where they are in the process, or else it would have come to you sooner. But yeah, we're anticipating the next few months.
Okay, and then it may be too early, but as part of the cost, does that include that the town would be paying that be for replacement also? Again, it may be too early in the process.
Yeah, so originally this $200,000 placeholder, $50,000 was just in those areas that we can low cost do shavings to improve those areas. And then we actually earmarked $150,000 to actually replace 50% share from the town, 50% share from the residents, specific squares. And so we had an initial estimate from the residents in that neighborhood.
Okay, thanks.
All righty, thank you. Any other council questions for staff? If not, we'll open this up for public comment. Lucinda Smith is up first.
Thank you. I just wanted to see if we could add to this ordinance before it gets passed, that there be notification of proposed action to remove a tree. That notification to the adjacent homeowners and or interested parties, something like maybe 2 weeks notification so that there can be further discussions, so that unless it's deemed to be an imminent danger to the community. So I just would like to have some community input if there's decisions to get rid of some of the trees. I have one in particular that I'm trying to maintain, but I would like to at least add some notification to us homeowners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lucinda. All right, and Roy is up next. Roy, I'll tell you, we hear you loud and clear on this, but I guess you can speak specifically to this ordinance and trees as they relate to fire hazard.
Okay, I have to say I'm disappointed. 3 years ago, or more than 3 years ago, I went to the town staff and they had suggested that I request and work with people to get the liquid ambers on the undesirable species list. That was 3 years ago. And they said, well, it's going to take some time because of the ordinances and changing the code and the deliberation. I think it was asked, and I said, it's going to be 2 months. I don't know why it can't be accelerated. And I'll just echo what Council Member Ravazio said at the May 19th meeting. Quote, our primary job as a council member is to protect the public's health and safety. I can't think of anything more important than eliminating tripping hazards where people can get seriously injured, particularly seniors. So I hope the program is accelerated. I'll tell you right now, we spent millions of dollars on the slotted gutters and no root barriers were put in and people weren't required to remove the liquid amber. So we're going to be repeating the whole drainage scenario problem that we had. So please, if you're not going to put it on this particular ordinance, I hope the next ordinance is out by next meeting, because we need it. And I'm not saying take down all liquid ambers. If somebody wants a liquid amber away from a structure, concrete, streets, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, that's fine. But they are undesirable. And through the grapevine, I know we're talking about vegetation here, but through the grapevine, apparently someone has just gone out and bought and planted liquid ambers. And how are you going to prevent somebody when they come in and say, hey, what trees can I plant? And liquid amber isn't on the undesirable species list. And they go and put them in the same place we're having problems. How many times do we have to keep repeating history? And my wife's had a heck of a time with her knee surgeries and back and stuff, trying to navigate the sidewalks around here. So anyway, I know you hear me. I hope you heard me again. I hope something gets done quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. All right, there are no other hands up at this time. Rebecca, have we received any email comments on this item?
No additional email comments were received on this item.
Okay, thank you. Then we are going to close public comment on 4C and bring it back to the town council for discussion or a motion. I'm wondering if any of our staff might want to touch very quickly on the issue of noticing.
Yeah, I can touch on it. This is Chief Martin speaking. With the noticing, that's basically what the current procedure is. Anytime anyone wants a tree removed, they would have to go through the entire tree permitting process, which requires the noticing, which could potentially draw out a tree removal for, I believe Adam mentioned in the last meeting, up to 30 days, if not longer. A lot of these trees that we come across where we're trying to expedite the process is usually during our evacuation route improvements. And that's when we come across this tree that we find whether it's either dead or dying or an extreme hazard, where at that point we make the determination where it has to be removed. On other trees that are still living and aren't within the immediate impact zone, those are usually followed through the permitting process.
Great, thank you. Ruben, any other discussion from council members? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I just wanted to, nobody sort of specifically followed up on the nature of liquid amber's presence in Corte Madera on Tamalpais Drive. To me, it's an absolute source of joy, and the stunning beauty of those, particularly in the fall, lining Tamalpais Drive, is something that is, to me, a very important feature of our town.
Yeah, thank you. David, I'll just remind you that we are talking about fire hazards with trees, and we're absolutely looking forward to the liquid amber discussion in October.
And all of the trees on the fire hazard list are either pines, firs, cypress, or conifers of some other kind, with the exception of acacia, which is a different issue. So it's pretty clear what belongs on this list. It's those that light up.
Thank you. Great. Any other comments from council members? And if not, would somebody please make a motion?
Yes, I'll move to approve item 4C.
Second.
Great. Thank you. Can we have a vote, please, Rebecca?
Councilmember Casiso?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes, thank you. And that will take us to 4F. Are there any council member questions? And if not, we'd love to hear from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for allowing me to pull this. Originally, this item again is requesting that we cancel the July 21st meeting. This is a normal practice for our town and many other cities and towns. They usually pick the end of July and going into August months as an opportunity to kind of reset, allow staff to take a break necessarily, and then get back to it. I wasn't sure when we wrote the staff report, based on our current schedule, if we would be able to do it. But after meeting with staff, I'm actually requesting that the council add the August, is it the August 4th date, Rebecca? The first meeting in August? So I'm asking council to cancel the July 21st meeting and the August 4th meeting. And the reason that I think it's absolutely necessary this year more than any other. Your directors and staff have been going at a really, I'll say, alarming pace, working 7 days a week, really, in some cases, for the past 4 months. And I need them to take a break and then really kind of reset and then go back at it. Now, I want you to know that during this period of time, your staff is still going to be working, but at least it allows me as a manager to order them to take some time off. And then what we're going to do is also use this time as we get to the end of July to really kind of start to set the stage for the reopening of some of our facilities. We just passed the safety plan. So we have the protocols in place to open, but we're not ready yet. But as we approach September and we can do that, I want to use the August months to kind of set our facilities up to open for business. And so I need that time. And so again, and then it'll also allow us at that point to really go and just go attack our plan. And so that second meeting in August moving forward, we're going to go and start to delivering a lot of agenda items and ordinances to this council. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks a lot, Todd. Any questions? If not, we'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. Members of the public, if you'd like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand through Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. We'll give you guys a couple seconds here. And seeing no public comments, Rebecca, do we have any email public comments?
No emailed public comments were received.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion and a motion. And I'll just say, Todd, I think we're all so grateful to the incredible work that you and your staff are doing. We realize that for the last several months, you guys have been asked to quite literally do more with less. And I'll tell you that I personally think, whatever you guys need, just tell us. If you guys, need a break from the rigors of these regular council meetings and people need to be able to catch their breaths, 100% understand, and we support you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Charles.
And so I'd just like to add, outside of the break, I think I've read a lot of articles recently about backlog of vacation time. I think that the work from home, the ability to take off is kind of compromised. And so I see a lot of institutions and businesses kind of pushing this. And so I just think it speaks to the wisdom of our town manager to basically being follow in step with this to make sure that we don't get a backlog farther into the fall of too much required vacation also, and kind of spacing it out and creating that safe environment for them to do that. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that as well. And, I can definitely see that it's needed with the staff, everybody really, so.
Thanks, Charles. David?
I'm in agreement. I would say ditto, but I also wanted to ask, is there any thought about when in-person meetings are likely to commence again?
Yeah, so amongst the city and town managers and city and town attorneys, we've been discussing that weekly. It looks like Novato is potentially going to be the first city to do that coming up here, but the rest of us are really waiting until probably September or past that point. We're just not comfortable yet with the way everything's going, where we can do it safely, especially those of us that have smaller rooms, council chambers. But it's something that we're discussing, and as I get closer to September, we'll start having conversations at the council level and get your feedback and direction on that.
Great. All right, thank you both. We'll take any other comments from council members, and if not, we'll take a motion. Yes, Fred.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we go ahead and cancel the July 21st, 2020 regular town council meeting and also the August 4th, 2020 regular town council meeting.
Charles Lee, second.
Great. Rebecca, can we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes. Great, thank you, everybody. That concludes the consent calendar. There are no public hearings, which brings us to item 6, our business items. The first is 6A, which is possible action to approve a proposal to hire student interns and adopt resolution number 25/2020, creating a new position classification for our student interns and establishing a salary range of $18 to $25 per hour. Staff report, please.
Yeah. I'll start off. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and RJ is also available to answer any questions. Again, this is the second, this item, the second of two meetings. So we brought this to council at a previous meeting and went over the background and the request for this type of position and the justification in the staff report. Council at that time agreed and asked us to come back to them to basically ratify it. And so before you is the position. And so we're asking that you allow the town manager to hire student interns for town departments and approve the new position classification titled student intern in the accompanying job description and salary range for this classification. And RJ's on the call if you have any questions for him.
Great, thank you. Are there any council questions?
We're talking about college level students, correct?
Yeah, correct. You know, I've had experience working with several levels of interns, and typically someone with several years of college experience is going to provide the best kind of sweet spot and benefit for the town.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Fred?
Yeah, we're not just talking about public works, right? This is, again, an student intern program, I want to say, that could reach other departments like Park and Rec. Because it seems like the job description, it's somewhat generic, I want to say. It actually says in here, no experience required, but then the staff report seems like it talks about an engineering position. So I just want clarification that we're not just talking about one position, but it's more like a program across town departments.
I would say, so for Public Works, there's an immediate need for assistance with certain programs, and the sidewalk program is one that we've kind of earmarked where they could really help with coordination and kind of the, you know, straightforward nature of running a sidewalk type program. So we have a need. I don't want to speak too much for other departments, but I'm sure others could tap into a similar resource and put that, you know, make that advantageous for them as well.
So, and to add to that, Councilmember Casisa, I think you raised this last time, and so our Human Resources Director did craft a job description where it could be in any department within the town, and so it was worded that way. I will say specific to Parks and Rec though, if you look at the salary range and the job descriptions, we actually handle that with part-time, and we call them part-time employees and have a resolution for that. And so we could use either job description. It does allow us flexibility, but there's similar ranges, and the classifications would be similar to part-time to intern. If you read what we're asking you to do in this current, you know, staff report.
Okay, and if there is another department that wanted to hire a student intern, you wouldn't need to come back to us, right? Because it's already approved through this resolution, correct?
That's correct, as long as I had the funding within the budget. So under my budget for like part-time employees, if I was able to, if I was going to hire somebody under this resolution, but I didn't have enough money in my part-time budget, I have to come back to you. I would come back to you.
Okay.
But if it was approved in the budget, then yes.
Okay. Overall, I think it's a great program. I think it's a win-win in a lot of ways.
Great. Thanks, Fred. Any other questions from council members? If not, we'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. If you'd like to comment on this item, please raise your hand or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Rebecca, have we received any email comments?
We've not received any email comments.
Okay, and we do not have any hands up, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for further discussion or a motion. Yeah, Charles?
Yeah, so just to follow up on the availability of interns for the rest of the departments, I would encourage, if there are opportunities, I do believe in mentorship and intern development in all kinds of things: finance, law, political science, planning, you know, permitting, inspection, and all, basically any kind of training, and especially in this day and age where we're probably going to be looking at resourcing new types of job, like, you know, basically changing vocational occupations and that kind of thing. It's a great resource to offer. If we can do it, everyone benefits. So I would encourage staff to explore options with that. That would be my 2 cents on that. But I can definitely.
Yeah, totally agree. I would be glad to provide this resource to, all of our departments across the town. Any other comments or motion? Yeah, Bob.
I'll move to approve the proposal to allow the town manager to hire student interns for town departments and approve a new position classification titled student intern.
Great. Is there a second? Looks like David.
Yes, David, second.
Excellent. Thank you. Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes. Great. That brings us to 6B, which is consideration and possible adoption of Resolution 26-2020, amending the compensation schedule to reflect the new student intern position.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The title says it all. This is now necessary as a mechanism. We need to add and amend our compensation schedule, adding this new position, and this resolution does that. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Todd. Are there any questions for staff on this? Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. If anyone would like to comment on this, please raise your hand or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Rebecca, do we have any email comments on this?
No email comments received.
Great, and no hands up either, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for any council comments or motion. Yeah, Bob?
Move to adopt resolution number 26/2020.
Is there a second?
David seconds.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Lee? Oh,
Yes.
sorry. I have to go in order. Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes. Thank you. That brings us to 6C, which is consideration and possible adoption of a transition from detailed or summary minutes to action minutes for town meetings. Is there a staff report?
Yes, thank you. I'll provide a brief summary, Mayor and council members, and I'll let our town manager jump in if he has anything to add to the discussion. But this is being brought forward, born out of a discussion that the town manager had with department heads about taking a close look at our budgets and seeing where it would be possible to make reductions, knowing that we could be dealing with shortfalls for 18 to 24 months. And it just made sense at this time to tighten up our budgets as much as we can. And this is one that the minutes are a valuable resource to staff and to council and the public, but that resource comes at a cost. And as you can see under the fiscal impact section, we have $36,000 budgeted across all departments for minute services. We spent a little over $27,000 in minute services in 2018-19 and a little over $18,000 to date with more invoices that still haven't been received yet. It is a little lower this year because of COVID. Our bodies haven't been meeting as regularly with the exception of town council. So that's artificially lower this year. We've gone back and forth over the years with summary minutes and action minutes, but I feel that in my search of the archives, it's been summary minutes since maybe the late 1970s. The council did have a discussion on this, possibly within the last 10 years, and it was decided that it was at their benefit to keep the summary minutes for the time being and revisit it at a later date. But with the easy availability of publicly available meetings on our YouTube channel and on our town council webpage, we have the opportunity to revisit this at this point. The benefit of summary minutes is that they provide context and background on each agenda item and convey the manner in which the final action was decided, so you can go back and read the history of what was presented and what the council discussed and what the public questioned. But on page 2 and 3, I listed the government code outlining what is required of each legislative body for the purposes of maintaining minutes. And in the town council rules and procedures, all that is specified is that the town clerk shall be required to make a record only of such business as was actually passed upon by a vote of the council or directed by the presiding officer, and shall not be required to record any remarks of council persons or of any other person except at the special request of a council person, except that a record shall be made of the names of persons addressing the council, the title of the subject matter to which their remarks related, and whether they spoke in support of or in opposition to such matter. In the summary of the government codes provided by the City Clerks Association of California, it also says that all components of minutes shall be for the primary purpose of memorializing decisions made by the legislative body. Any minutes component that does not serve this primary purpose should be minimized or eliminated, and this includes comments made by individual body members and members of the public. And this is primarily because it's easy to get speculative when you're summarizing a conversation. So the reason why this was scheduled in this particular order on the agenda is that our finance director did include assumptions of reductions in budget for 4 minutes. So we wanted to make sure that the council weighed in on that before hearing the budget revision items, and we can make adjustments if necessary. But at this point, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I thought it would be good to discuss.
Yeah, Todd.
And Mr. Mayor, thank you, Rebecca. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just want to thank Rebecca as always. Her staff report's solid and just very thorough, and it lays it out. For me, it's not my decision. This is yours. And so no harm if you don't agree with me. You won't hurt my feelings. But when we had this conversation with staff, I was shocked of what the taxpayer money that we spend on minutes when, I think this conversation was definitely necessary as soon as possible. One of the other things is I don't think staff and the council have really been positioned to have this conversation until now with the technology. Our meetings now are recorded. And so nothing says that we can't go back to a meeting, 2 years from now in the future. And, if it's important, we can pull the transcripts. We can have those minutes transcribed. But more so than anything for me, when I look back at something, the context, I get way more out of looking at a video and seeing that meeting, the tone, the conversation with the community and the council. We get so much more now for the way we're set up with technology. And so I feel like we need to move forward to the 21st century. We need to save, tens of thousands of dollars in taxpayer money and move forward, relying on our video and audio capabilities. And so we wanted to share this conversation with you and bring it to your attention. Again, I think that the budget really surprised me of what we actually spend. And this, again, would be across this action, what I'm asking. I'm not asking for this conversation to be had with all the boards and commissions within the town. I'm asking the town council to decide for the council and all the boards and commissions. So this would go across every body within Corte Madera. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Todd. Are there any questions from council members? We'll come back for comments after.
Well, I did want to add that the attachment 2 does list the examples of minutes of each of the cities and towns in Marin, and I listed the 5 cities that currently have action item minutes and linked to them so that you could see what a potential change to that format would look like.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Any questions? Yeah, David?
This is for not only the council's commissions, but us as council as well. Yes. Everything.
Any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. And our first hand up is from a local dignitary, the former mayor, James Andrews. He is muted. There we are. You there, Jim? Unfortunately, we cannot hear Mr. Andrews. He is unmuted, so I believe there may be microphone issues, so I'm going to go ahead and take him off, and we can come back to him after others have had a chance to speak and see if that's been straightened out. So next up is Roy Wolford.
Hey, I agree with what Todd said, and I guess a question or clarification from Rebecca. One of the things that's needed when you have videotape, agree 100%, you go back and look at the videos, you need to have an indexing system to be able to pull up keywords, or you want to find out, hey, Roy Wolford spoke on such and such a date. You need some text search capability that's associated with the catalogs that you keep on the videos in order to pull something up, because you don't want to spend days and days going through videotapes trying to figure out, hey, I was trying to find out that one particular area. But I do agree that the minutes have been incredibly detailed. But yeah, I hear that it's very costly too. So that's my comments, and maybe Rebecca can clarify how you go back and access what you're looking for in the video catalog.
Great, thank you, Roy. Jim has taken his hand down and not put it back up, so I'll just let him know that if he's having technical difficulties, and oh, hand's back up there. All right, we'll give him a chance here. Hopefully we can hear him now. Unmute him.
Myself.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, I just heard Roy's comment, and it's very useful. I would keep the more detailed minutes until such time as the indexing is available, because it's very useful to just be able to quickly skim through a bunch of pages and find where the discussion occurred, and then at least you know where on the tape to go to look for the actual discussion if you want to get a sense of the tenor of the comments, the expressions of the people. And so I would urge you not to do away with it for at least council and probably the planning commission.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, and we do not have any other hands up at this point. Rebecca, are there any emailed comments on this item?
We have not received any emailed comments on this item.
Okay, then we will close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion. Charles, would you start us off, please?
So yes, to Roy and Jim's point, I also brought that up with Todd in evaluating this. I would say we should pass it now. I've functioned under similar action meeting minutes and other at SFO and other places, and I find them incredibly efficient and much better suited for conducting business. And the expenses, I don't think we're getting that much value out of it based on the video. What I would say is, when you do it, it kind of reads like the agenda. So in those items on the video, there's a time in which that's discussed. And I don't think you really should give them, ultimately the whole thing, the context of an entire item should be evaluated if you're going back, right? So say 6E, you just say it's on the video from 1 hour and 30 minutes to 1 hour and 45 minutes, something like that, so that the action items are tied to the video timing, and then people could reference it. And I think that that's a really easy thing to do, and it wouldn't delay our ability to roll this out and start saving money this month. So, but Becca, Ed wants to talk to that, but that's all I wanted to say, is that I hear everyone and I just want to see it move forward as well, though. So.
Okay, great. Thanks. Rebecca?
Thank you, Mayor Beckman. I don't know that we've been using YouTube to catalog our videos. We did move away from the Granicus system, and we're currently taking a step back and just evaluating other options that might be more cost effective and more user friendly. So I'll add that to my search list for what we're looking for. But the action minutes.
Yeah, so another service I've been looking at lately is Audio Up, and you can actually make comments as it goes along, right? Instead of the whole YouTube where you would have this, you can comment at that point. And so that might be good for further feedback or evaluations in the long term as a service like that. And it's also like YouTube, I think it's free and available. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, I did want to point out that action minutes will still list the speakers. It may not say the full complement of what they spoke about, but their name as being a provider of public comment will be listed in the minutes. So you could easily take that and go back to that item on the agenda, but we will go back to indexing our YouTube videos like we used to do prior toward moving to Granicus. So we could, when we go back and do the indexing under the YouTube videos, we could either list public comment or possibly even paste in the action minutes for that meeting and then use that to index each agenda item, which would serve that purpose. But there are workarounds that I can think of to get us through the interim until we have a full solution.
Another thing is I'm sure with YouTube, there's already other third-party systems that would allow you to look at the audio content within videos to do searches. So if there's freeware that ultimately we could get, like, make people aware of on the website that would allow them to search the YouTube databases or something like that, we could also do it that way as another suggestion and cost savings measure.
Sure. David?
As long as it's secure. I'm generally in agreement with what Councilmember Lee has said.
All right. Any other comments from council members? Yeah, Fred?
Yeah, I want to thank Rebecca and also Todd with the staff, because digging down on this stuff, I know it's a process, but I was surprised to see how much all this is costing us. One question I do have is that if we vote on this tonight and it goes through, are we looking like at a transition period to get some kind of indexing up and running? That's one. And two, I noticed in the staff report, our town council's rules and procedures are last adopted in 2017. Can we see if we can get that on the agenda at an upcoming meeting and see if we need to update those? Because it would be like 2.5 years or so since those have been looked at.
That was actually our town attorney's suggestion when she was reviewing my staff report.
Okay, thanks.
Great. So yeah, Rebecca, you said that it's easy to go back to indexing, right? Because you used to do that anyway.
Yes. It takes a certain amount of time, but if you're paying attention during the meeting and you write about the time at which each item starts and ends, it makes the process go quicker. And I do have a brief question for our town attorney. She pointed out one part of the particular rules and procedures that may need revising based on your decision this evening. I believe that had something to do with outlining the subject matter that remarks were made about.
Rebecca, what was, I'm not sure the context of your question.
Councilmember Casisa asked if the rules and procedures could be brought back for being updated at some point in the near future, given they were last updated in 2017. And I spoke to the fact that you had concerns about a portion of the part that relates to minutes as possibly needing updating depending on their action this evening.
Yes, there's a provision in your rules that says that you would indicate for each person giving public comment the name of the person and whether they were in support of or against. And so that level of detail is not required. And I would say if you're moving forward with this, that you take that out. Certainly if you want to adopt a different procedure, and I would defer to Adam on this a little bit, for planning commission, quasi-judicial proceedings, we can do that. And we can do that at the staff level. And certainly transcripts can be made at any point in time, even if you don't have minutes, as long as you have the video. So I think we can do a little update to that to be consistent with this. And as you know, on a legislative matter, saying whether you're in support of or against doesn't necessarily capture it, because someone may be in support of parts and not in support of other parts and want to make changes. And I don't think we need to get into that level of detail.
Yeah, Fred?
Yeah, Teresa, do our rules and procedures have to be consistent with if we pass this tonight? So in other words, if we pass this tonight, would we have to wait until the next meeting to update our rules and procedures before this could take effect, or does it matter?
So I think that we could, when you adopt the minutes, if you haven't finished your rules and procedures, we could have you take a vote to waive the procedures for passing those minutes, which would get you through. I don't think staff needs to rush through the procedure changes in order to make this effect. So it just may take one extra step when you adopt your minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
So
okay,
if they go forward with this, if they go forward with this evening, this would take effect
for any minutes you do going forward. And then when we bring them to council, we can just add to the motion that it would be also a motion to waive the rules with respect to the point that I just pointed out.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council members on this item? And if not, I will entertain a motion. Yeah, Bob.
I move that we transition to action minutes for all town meetings.
Great.
Second.
Is there a second? Great. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Could we have a vote, please, Rebecca?
Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes. Great, thank you. That brings us to 6D, which is consideration and possible adoption of Resolution 27-2020, approving a revised budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. Daria, whenever you're ready.
Hold on, Mayor Beckman. I have an entitlement that may ultimately benefit from the extension of the lapse dates, and therefore, based on the Political Reform Act, I'd like to recuse myself from.
That's going to be our next item.
It's not.
We're on 6D right now, the budget item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. We'll be right there. All right, Daria.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you. This item is the revision of the 2020-21 budget. The budget was adopted in June of 2019 as part of a 2-year budget. However, there have been this new information available that's requiring the budget to be revised. And the most material item has to do with revenue reductions related to the COVID-19 emergency. Revenue is expected to decrease by a net amount of more than $2.1 million in the year that just started on July 1st, compared to what was adopted originally. The sales tax, we believe, will decrease about $2.1 million due to businesses being closed, and hotel tax will decrease more than $400,000 for the same reason, the COVID-19 emergency. And then there are other smaller decreases, such as a loss of franchise fees of about $15,000 due to changes with the cable franchise, and permits that for fire inspection that the town previously retained will be turned over to the fire authority, and that's about $71,000. And then partly offsetting some of these increases is an increase of about $48,000 in property tax revenue, according to latest estimates, as well as the fact that town staff has been doing increased sanitary district work. As you know, the sanitary district does not have employees of its own and pays for town employees to do its work. And while working with the Public Works Director, was able to identify an additional $359,000 that the town can collect from the sanitary district. So, as I said, the net result is still about $2.1 million less revenue than had been in the original budget. In terms of expenditures, the town was able to decrease expenditures by nearly $2.3 million to help balance the budget in light of these drastic revenue reductions. Well, the biggest changes are the eliminations of the pension trust payment and the OPEB payments. The pension, those two total about $1.1 million. And currently there's $3.4 million in our pension trust and 2.8 in the OPEB trust as of the latest statements that we've received. And as you know, in this year, we did make an extra payment to the pension trust of $1 million because in the previous year, 2018-19, there was a greater than expected surplus. So we still are on schedule with that extra payment. And if circumstances improve, and it seems prudent, staff will return with a request to deposit money into those trusts. But as of now, we've taken them out. We're also able to decrease salaries by about $308,000. There's been a superintendent of public works position that's been vacant, and we've taken it out of the budget now. the changes to an engineering position that you just discussed earlier in the meeting and replaced it with an intern position. And then also the Public Works Director was able to confirm with Transportation Authority of Marin that we're able to charge some of our engineering staff to Measure AA funds. So we've done that for one of the projects. And then other changes were that we had budgeted about $109,000 as an increase to police services, and that didn't materialize. The police budget is flat, so we could take that increase out. And fire, where we had estimated about $183,000 increase, it actually decreased by about, I think it was $41,000 due to staffing changes when the chief, that former chief retired, and the fire marshal assuming the fire chief position and the fire marshal position remaining vacant. And then we've moved some landscaping and maintenance services to other funds, some maintenance of playgrounds and skate park and tennis court will be paid for by the Recreation Capital Fund, and some landscaping services associated with fire reduction are being paid for by the sales tax fund. And then there are miscellaneous reductions, the minutes transcribing that you just talked about, July 4th expenditure since the parade was canceled. So as a result, after all of those items and a few more that I've listed in the staff report, the result is there's an estimated surplus estimated of about $176,000. There's the 10% reserve, of course, that's required. And then there's, when you count the Park Madera Center Fund debt that's there's still an additional 8% reserve. So there's an 18% reserve altogether projected for this current fiscal year. Did you want me to move on to the capital funds, or did you want me to take questions about the operating fund?
Unless there are any burning questions, I'd say keep moving through this.
Okay. So then the capital funds are the next funds that are in the packet that you were given. The capital budget overall is decreasing by about $1.2 million compared to the adopted budget. The biggest decrease is in the Corte Madera sales tax fund, which does have some expenditures in there that aren't capital expenditures, but they're in that fund. The largest decrease is that the town hall addition and the town hall remodel expenditures totaling $2.1 million are not in the budget as that project's being postponed. The sales tax fund is also expecting a decrease in sales tax of about $1.2 million. And so in order to try to preserve that fund, a lot of projects have been moved out to other funds. There's about $1.7 million in grants that will be paying for some of these projects. And so those have been moved to the capital improvement fund. As I mentioned, Measure A Parks is going to be fully expended on the Skunk Hollow improvements. Some maintenance previously budgeted in the operating fund will be paid for by the capital improvement fund. And the gas tax fund is expected to be fully expended on preventive maintenance. One thing I did want to note is that in the gas tax fund, the decrease to expenditures that I mentioned of $556,000 is not all taking place in this current fiscal year. Some of it was in the prior fiscal year. So the actual amount for the current year is $80,000. There was a maintenance of effort requirement that the town had to meet. And so we spent, the town had to spend the majority of the balance in the gas tax in 2018-19. And then various funds will pay for the Tamil Vista Boulevard complete streets that had previously been scheduled to be paid for by the Corte Madera sales tax fund. There are some grants. There's the street impact fees, the road maintenance rehab fund, and the Tam Ridge Traffic Improvement Fund. So at the end of all of this, we're estimating that the Corte Madera sales tax will have a balance of about $6 million, which will include the $2.5 million emergency reserve that the council approved at the last meeting, or 2 meetings ago, I think. And then all of the funds are, again, included in the packet that you received with the various projects all listed out. So that's the capital fund. Unless anyone has any questions, I'll move on to the 2 remaining funds that are in here. Which
David, did you have
Daria, listed under the capital is increased expenditures for fire prevention and disaster preparedness. I was wondering where the expected income from Measure C is located. I believe that 20% of the total to be raised by the Joint Powers Authority on Wildfire Prevention is supposed to come back to the constituent towns and jurisdictions for whatever projects they may light up.
Yes, the Measure C money that the town is expected to receive has been budgeted with the Central Marin Fire Authority. So it will be turned over to the Central Marin Fire Authority. There's a Measure C fund not on the town's books, but in Central Marin Fire Authority's books, where we'll be keeping track of those funds as well as the funds that Larkspur pays into that fund to pay for I believe the title is hazard mitigation specialist, as well as other projects related to hazard mitigation.
Okay, but at the same time, we are listing stepping up our own expenditures on fire prevention and disaster preparedness, right?
That's true. Yeah, separate from Measure C, yes. Those are to be paid for by Measure F. The town sales tax, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Vice Mayor, if I can just add to that too, one of the key things with Measure C is that it couldn't supplement what cities and towns are already doing. That was one of the things that the cities and towns took to the voters. It's one of the things we talked to our voters about, of like, it was a much broader context conversation in the county, right? 80% of the issue was unincorporated county. But there are still, like you said, hundreds of thousands of dollars through Measure C that comes to the town of Corte Madera that we are now pushing that revenue into the fire authority for Todd Lando and the work he's gonna do. There'll be some vegetation management projects specific to the town of Corte Madera. But on our side, you know how we budgeted this last fiscal year, 350,000 plus for vegetation management under, the great work of Marla Orth and her team. We're continuing to do that, and we're actually expanding it because we know it's necessary. And so I appreciate the question. Our intent is to be as aggressive as we possibly can.
Well, the other thing that's in the back of my mind, and maybe this is a discussion item and I should be quiet and come back when we're discussing this.
Okay. Alrighty, thank you. Daria, you had more, right?
Just a couple more things. Just to notice that the insurance fund is showing an increase of $57,000 more than expected for property and liability insurance premiums, which will still leave a balance of about $232,000 as a claims reserve. And then the Park Madera rental revenue, according to the property managers, there's about $7,000 less than originally anticipated. And there's a deficit of still more than $2 million that's expected. And then just one other thing, the last thing that I had mentioned in the staff report is that for the current, or not the current year, the year that just ended on June 30th, 2019-20, last month we were expecting a deficit of about $2.3 million, and now it's nearly $1 million less than that, the deficit, and that's mainly due to, again, the sanitary district revenue for staff time, as well as property tax revenue being a little greater than had previously been expected. That's all I have on this item.
Great. Thank you so much, Daria. Yeah, Todd.
And just Mr. Mayor, members of the council, really quick, Daria, thank you. I love the way I really appreciate the way Daria lays out the budget, because it's outstanding. And so for all of us to be able to follow it, I'm not going to add to that, but I did want to, and she pointed it out, but I want to say it as many times as possible. This is an unprecedented time. You know, the last fiscal year, we closed the gap with the general fund monies from some of the surpluses the last few years. This fiscal year, as you can see, we're not using the 2.5 emergency reserve from the sales tax. We're not using any of our 10% reserves. We're not using any reserves at all, not $1. We balanced the budget. And one of the things through previous councils in the finance committee, we developed the trust fund of over $1.2 million that we put into it annually. As Daria said, as part of some of our prior surpluses, this council agreed and put $1 million additional payment in this last fiscal year. And so being where we are, we thought it was appropriate. This is kind of a secondary mechanism for us. If you look at our 10-year trends, it flows from our payments from 1.2 all the way down to 600,000 in some of the anticipated economic downturns. This is obviously never anticipated, but still the mechanism is there. And so we're recommending we actually take that to zero. But if we have the money at the end of the year, we think we're going to have a projected surplus that will come back to you and ask you to put that into the pension trust. And I just, again, wanted to point that out. And one other thing, because I'm really sensitive to it, we decreased training. You'll see that as one of the line items, but that was for the conferences. A lot of us go to annual conferences, as you know, just like the council. That's changed this year. So we took those big ticket items out, but training, we're going full steam ahead. And so we'll do a lot of virtual training, a lot of in-house training this year, you know, focused on leadership and customer service and everything else, safety and everything else that is necessary. So I didn't want you to think that we're just cutting training. That will not happen moving forward. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions. And thanks again, Daria. Good work.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both. Any questions for staff?
I'm sorry, it's kind of a picky question, but Daria, when you lay out the numbers in the chart on, let's see, this would be page 16 out of 56. What's the difference between the two right-hand columns? They both say the same thing on the title.
Which, I don't have page numbers, I'm sorry, on my copy. What's the title on this?
This is the general fund.
Okay, on the...
Attachment, excuse me, it's the second page of attachment 2, general fund.
Okay, that says proposed budget revision.
Yes.
Okay, and then the two columns that say 2020, 21 proposed, oh, that should say adopted. One should say adopted and the other proposed. It was...
which is the first one?
Is adopted, yes.
Adopted.
Yeah. That was the one that actually adopted last June.
Okay, so the far right one is the one that you're asking for us to act on.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, good catch, David. Thanks for clarifying that, Daria. Any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. Any members of the public who would like to comment on this budget revision resolution, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom. We will also accept public comments emailed to publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Rebecca, do we have any email public comments on this item?
We have not received any emailed public comments on this item.
Great, thank you. And we have no hands up, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion. Are there any council comments? And if not, we'll take a motion. Yeah, David?
It's part of the initial action on the climate adaptation plan is sort of scheduling out future work on steps, lanes, and paths. I think the majority of the adaptation plan will relate to the Bayside and sea level rise, but there's a component that's begun to be discussed with staff, et cetera, on work on that. And I see the increased level of expenditures on vegetation management, and I was just wondering if RJ or someone has their finger on the pulse of where we might, or when, it may be a year, as far as I know, we might start to salt in money available for widening, solidifying, making more sound some of the evacuation routes.
Yeah, thank you, David. Hopefully, can you hear me?
Just barely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we've received some feedback over some of the weekly calls and through emails and public feedback. And I think, you know, there's this desire to meet and get everyone who's been involved over the years and kind of collaborate, you know, whether it be members of the BPAC, whether it be members of the NRG and some of these other groups. And I think collaborate and brainstorm kind of maybe what might be more of a professional service type effort initially, which we think we can pull, you know, that type of fund from some of the budget line items that we do have. And then that would roll into a larger effort should we move into implementation, which, you know, possibly could be later in the, possibly next fiscal year.
And I just wanted to mention that the Community Foundation has kind of contacted some of us and indicating willingness to participate. I don't know to what level, but they appear to be interested and motivated.
Yeah, and we'll be working to set that initial collaboration meeting up in the next few weeks.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Any other comments from council members? Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, I just want to thank Daria, and I want to say the entire staff. It just seems like the balance, it's pretty well budgeted. It's pretty well balanced. If there's no major cuts, which I'm really impressed with when you look at what's going on in this current environment. So I just want to thank you. I think you guys did a great job with this.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see Marla has her hand raised. Thank you, because I was going to ask for her to jump in as staff to talk about the path with the, you know, what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, thanks for pointing it out. I did not even notice.
It is a big step that we're taking now. Marla, can you speak to that?
Okay, let me get Marla on here.
Yes, we have the evacuation routes on our schedule. Christmas Tree Hill is scheduled for the latter part of July. There are 7 evacuation routes that are scheduled for major mitigation. They are largely going to require vegetation management, but a fair amount of work from Public Works. The design or the hope is to put new lighting, new signage, and make sure that any of the risers are repaired, because there are some that have, you know, kind of fallen apart. So those are on it. Those priorities have been given to me by Ruben Martin. And so those are on the schedule. I will work on the rest of them in a descending priority order. They are incorporated into the current budget going forward. And like I said, in a descending order basis. We may not get them all done. Some need much more work than other. Paths are not so concerning. It's getting people off the hills when they need to evacuate. So David, thank you for your question. I share your concern. I really feel that this is a very high priority. I have had this discussion with Todd. He agrees, and we are Johnny on the spot. If you have other suggestions beyond what Ruben gave, please just reach out to me and let me know your thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you, Marla. Great. Do we have any other comments from council members? Yeah, Bob.
Well, just 2 things. One, I've been through a lot of budget meetings, probably more than anybody else in this meeting right now. This is a great report. This is a very difficult meeting to have. This is a very difficult topic. And I just wanted to thank Daria for making it really understandable and easy to read, because this is tough. So thank you for that. And with that, I'll move that we approve resolution number 23/2019.
I'll second that.
Great. Thank you, Fred. Rebecca, can we have a vote when you're ready, please?
Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes. Thank you. That brings us to 6E. Charles?
So as I stated before, I have an outstanding permit with the town that I'm currently working through, and I'll need to recuse myself from deliberation on this. So I'll be turning off my video and muting myself.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so item 6E is consideration and possible action to approve resolution 28-2020, extending the lapse date for certain types of entitlements by 120 days due to delays and impacts caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and compliance with state and county public health orders. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Staff is requesting this evening that the town council consider whether to extend permit lapse provisions for certain entitlements, excuse me, such as design review and conditional use permits by 120 days or some other amount of time due to the impacts of COVID-19. As Todd said, we are not making, related to another project, this is for your consideration. We did not make a recommendation this evening to actually adopt the resolution, but want to definitely for the council to consider this evening as it is time sensitive. An extension to the permit lapse provisions would allow additional time for permit holders to either obtain a building permit or commence construction, thereby tolling the expiration of a permit, or would allow additional time for a permit holder to file an extension of their existing permit. Staff is requesting the town council consider this issue at this time, in part due to a request the town received from the homeowners of 159 Prince Royal Drive to extend a previously granted design review permit that is actually already expired, but also because the general town-wide policy issue that this request raised related to the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic and shelter-in-place mandates on the ability of permit holders to meet the town's municipal code permit lapse provisions. Just for some background, and a lot of this is in the staff report that was sent on Friday, and then some also in the supplemental memo that was sent to the council and should be available to the public. Rebecca, actually, could you just maybe at the start, it'd be better just to note for the public where those documents are if they wish to view those. I think there's a couple of public comment letters as well that we should
yes. Just a moment, Adam. I'll see if I can easily share it. Oh, I think I closed it. Okay, let me share the screen quickly. This is something new that we started with this meeting. C6E, the agenda was updated on the website to include all public comment received before the start of the meeting. And it will be updated after the meeting tomorrow to reflect any written comment we received on any agenda item. And they'll be listed at the point in which they appear on the agenda. So you can see there's two public comment items and a staff memo associated with 6E now that will be part of the record.
Thanks, Rebecca. I really appreciate that. That's helpful for everyone to see. And so by way of background, the Corte Madera Municipal Code includes several permit lapse provisions related to planning entitlements and other instances where permits may be granted by the town. These lapse provisions vary, but generally set permit expiration dates from 1 to 2 years from the date the permit becomes effective, essentially when they were approved. With the ability in certain instances for staff to allow 1-year extensions up to a maximum of 3 years from the date a permit becomes effective. These lapse provisions really are generally intended to ensure that the action is taken by the permit holder within a time frame that reasonably assures conditions under which the permit was granted do not substantially change or have not substantially changed. The specific permit lapse provisions that are the subject of tonight's discussion and are the subject of the draft resolution presented for your consideration this evening are an attachment to your staff report, but include, just for clarity, permit lapse provisions related to conditional use permits, variance approvals, design review and sign permits, precise plan approvals, lot line adjustment approvals, tree permits, and encroachment permits for private parking facilities. And those specific sections are listed in your staff report. The resolution prepared for your consideration recognizes that COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting state and county health orders may have affected the ability of permit holders and their professionals needed to prepare project plans required for obtaining building permits, such as architects and engineers, to meet prescribed permit expiration deadlines. To date, in addition to the requests by the homeowners of 159 Prince Royal Drive, and again, the homeowners have communicated the request by letter today, and that was what I was referring to where Rebecca pulled that up on the agenda. The town has communicated with 2 permit holders who have cited the coronavirus as a cause of delay with their projects and thus the need for a 1-year extension. And staff has the discretion under the municipal code to grant those extension requests. Other permit holders, such as one example might be Aimco's precise plan permit associated with the Robin Drive residential subdivision. We're in year 2 of that approval, may request additional time beyond that permitted under the municipal code in the future due to delays caused by coronavirus, but we don't know that at this time, and they have not requested. We don't have other requests for extensions at this time, including that project. To be clear, it appears that the most immediate effect of the town council's decision this evening would be related to whether the 159 Prince Royal Drive design review permit will be extended. If the town council does not take action to extend the lapse date for the entitlements specified in the draft resolution number 28, 2020, the homeowners would need to submit a new design review application to the planning department for planning commission approval in order to construct the proposed project. Even if the town council decides to extend the lapse date for those entitlements, for the entitlements specified in the draft resolution, a building permit would need to be issued by the town for the 159 Prince Royal Drive project prior to the end of the extension period, or the design review permit would also expire with no ability to extend that further. Draft resolution includes an extension of 120 days, which I noted before. It's somewhat of a placeholder, but it does correspond somewhat to the 2.5 months that general offices were required to be closed under the Marin County Health Order, basically from March 16th to June 1st. And as noted in the staff report, it does include some delay that we are experiencing on our end in reviewing and processing building permits that we have that are submitted to us. The draft reso also makes clear that permits issued on or after June 1st, 2020 would not be eligible for an extension, nor would permits that have expired before the March 16th, 2020 Marin County shelter-in-place order. So with that, I already mentioned that we have had some public comment on this, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Great, thank you, Adam. Does anybody have questions for Adam?
I have a question. Adam, most of these delays are very practical things that you handle in staff, right? Most of the time, until they get really, really extended. What generically are things that change in the environment that could really substantially affect findings by planning commission or town council?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And there's nothing really specified in the code. But in my view, what you're really looking for is, for example, a project gets approved and it gets an entitlement. The the permit holder doesn't move forward with that application. And then adjacent property decides to develop something new on that site. And it could be previously a parking lot and now there's a building there, and maybe it's a residential building. Therefore, you at the end, you go back to that first permit that was granted and nothing constructed, and you sort of want to reevaluate whether the findings under which that original permit was granted could still be made. And so I think that's the general idea of why there is a certain time period to begin with. At some point, a permit that is granted becomes sort of stale. The environmental conditions around that site may have changed. One other example would be 200 Nellen. That's a mixed-use office and retail building that was recently constructed. They actually received a design review approval for that project in 2007, but was during that time, they didn't move forward because there was a lot of other things going on in that area regarding the flyover and some changes to transportation networks and so on, and development of obviously the Tam Ridge apartment project. So when they came back about 10 years later, we looked at it and said that, that permit is no longer valid. Its conditions have changed. The Tam Ridge apartment complex is now built. There's no flyover. Some of the things that were evaluated at that time, they came back essentially with the same project, however, and were approved. And now, obviously, that approved by the Planning Commission, that project is now constructed. So hopefully that gives a little bit of context.
Great. Thank you, Adam. Are there any other questions? Yeah, Fred?
Yeah, Adam, during the period, I think you mentioned that you guys were somewhat shut down between March 11th and June 1st. Were people still able to submit plans? I know there may have been a delay due to working from home and stuff like that, but during that time period, could people still submit what they needed to submit to get a permit?
Yes, absolutely. And the reference I was making between March 16th and June 1st was not actually the town offices were still open. We were still accepting permits, but theoretically some other professional offices or general offices, we were considered essential workers, and our office was considered an essential office, but other more general offices were likely closed during that period of time. And by June 1st, they were able to open. But yes, we were available. We had notices on our website. Anybody would call us, we would tell them, yes, you can still submit. We were able to quickly transition to an electronic system. So there were some that took some time, but yes, we were open and accepting permit submittals.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, Bob? You're muted, by the way.
Sorry about that. Adam, so the design application approval was May 16th, 2017, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And they applied for first draft of a building permit when?
It was in August of 2019. So last year, almost about a year.
And then have you heard anything else from them since then before June 29th?
Periodically, yes, we've heard from them. We have not received any resubmittals after we provided comments on their first submission. We provided those comments, and I believe it was maybe late September of 2019. And after that time, we would hear periodically some questions from the architect, but nothing submitted until June 29. And we did not hear, anything regarding the lapse of the permit until after the permit expired.
And the permit expired when? May 16th?
May 16th, 2020.
3 years.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, David?
On that specific project, and apropos of my earlier question, has anything been built adjacent to that piece of real estate, or are there other changes in the environment in the interim?
So there was an accessory dwelling unit built. It's under construction right now. That went through its own ministerial approval process.
On the same property?
On the same property. Downslope from it, that's correct. Just a point of information, I think one of the public comments referenced 1,900 square feet. It's actually 1,195 square feet. So,
thank you.
Great, thanks. Are there any other questions right now? If not, we're going to go ahead and turn this over to the public. Members of the public, if you'd like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand through Zoom. I know we've received some email comments as well. So I think we'll start with those to give folks a chance to raise their hand. Oh, I see Margaret Bandel has her hand up. I know she also submitted a comment. So maybe we'll take her on here and then let her speak, and then we can read any leftover emails after everybody that wants to speak has had a chance to do so. So we'll go ahead and get Margaret. Rebecca, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Rebecca. You caught what I was going to say, that two people on the calls, attendees, did both submit public comments. So I was going to wait and see what they, if they wish to share their comment before I read their comments. Also, I did receive a comment asking if I could please share the timer that I had shared at the last meeting. And I was having trouble with that at the beginning of the meeting, but it's ready to go if you would like me to share that.
Yes, please. Then I don't have to worry about it with my phone here. Thank you.
Just a minute, please.
Okay, we'll get Margaret on here.
Okay.
Hi, Margaret.
Unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for listening to or hopefully reading my comments and listening. This is really disturbing to me because the permit was not only, the design review permit was not only due after the second year, this project got a third year, which as I understand it is fairly unusual. And now what's being asked for is more time after a third year. This isn't a matter of extending time. This is a matter of resurrecting something that already died. That design review permit died. It was initially, the plan was initially submitted a year ago in August 2019. It was deemed incomplete, sent back, and nothing was done until the end of this year. There was plenty of time to do something, and it was just forgotten about and not attended to. It's very worrisome also to me that this is couched, this favor that 159 is asking for is couched in a town resolution when no one has asked for this extension or needed it except for this one project. And until I called Mr. Wolf and asked the question of how many projects actually were going to be affected or gain a grant of this favor, no one was going to say how many projects were affected, and this was the only one. This is almost like a personal grant of more time because no one else is even requesting it. It's really bothersome to me that things like this are happening when people have to follow what the municipal code says. We're supposed to be respectful of it, and then there are other people who take advantage of it, and this one really has taken advantage of the whole situation. And the environment of that lot has changed. I live across the street from it. A piece of the hillside has been carved away, and now a very large accessory dwelling unit is being built and probably will be not finished for quite a while. So, as I said in my comment, I really am in total opposition to this, and I think that it's very suspect of how it was presented to the council tonight. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Margaret. Next up is going to be Joel Hernandez.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
Awesome, great. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Joel Hernandez. I'm the owner of 159 Prince Royal Drive. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak on this very important subject. Choosing not to adopt this resolution would have devastating effects on our family, so I'm here to kindly request this extension. The COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented, and the effects of such an event will send ripples that will be felt for years to come. I'd like to share a glimpse into what this pandemic has meant to me. Society has labeled my wife and I as frontline essential healthcare workers. She's a physician. I'm a nurse manager of an emergency department in San Francisco. When COVID hit, it was all hands on deck. When the country shut down, we went to work because that's what we signed up to do. Priorities changed. They had to. Things once thought important took a back seat to other things because it had to, for my family's sake. No longer was I thinking about a deadline or expiration date. Instead, I'm trying to figure out how not to bring this virus that surrounds me for 10 hours of the day back home to my kids, to my parents. You don't have to work in healthcare to understand that, to feel that. It's innately human to want to protect your loved ones, and you'd sacrifice everything to do so. So what deadline? COVID shut down the world. How is Corte Madera exempt? The federal government even granted an extension on tax filing. Obviously, it was the right thing to do. In my workplace, the American Heart Association granted a 100-day extension on the expiration of certain certifications for our physicians and nurses. These life-saving, compliance, and regulatory requirements normally necessary to work in hospitals were granted extensions if they expired during COVID. Why? Because even they understood that frontline essential workers were too busy trying to save lives instead of trying to meet deadlines. If you believe that we've had many years to submit for this building permit and failed to do so because of lack of effort, that's simply not the case. As we wrote in our letter to you, this has been a very complicated application and many delays were out of our control. We were simply trying to comply with what the town asked, and this took a very long time, only to culminate in the pandemic, which was out of everybody's control. The town council granting us this extension would send the following message to us. Number one, priorities rightfully change in a time of global health crisis. Number two, building permits can rightfully take a backseat to preserving one's health and prioritizing being a frontline worker. Number three, the town truly values its frontline workers and citizens affected by COVID and will support us to back in our time of need. Number four, the town as a result of shutdown was unable to offer all the exact same resources, making it harder for citizens to make deadlines. And number five, the town understands that in order to obey shelter in place, not everyone could complete their work in order to meet deadlines, including our consultants for a building project that needed to do on-site work. We appreciate the town's council's support and attention. Adopting this resolution is the right thing to do, and denying it would be such a disservice to those that chose to put their families, community, and patients first.
Thank you, Joel.
At a time of crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. We do not have any other hands up at this time, so we'll go ahead and move over to any emailed public comments where the author has not spoken here, and Rebecca will read at least the first 3 minutes of these emails. Do we have any such emails, Rebecca?
There were no other emails received.
Oh, great. Okay. Well then, seeing no other public comment, we're going to go ahead and close public comment on this item and bring it back to council for discussion. Who would like to start us off? Yeah, David.
First of all, Mr. Hernandez, I would want to extend a real notion of gratitude to you and your doctor spouse for being frontline workers in this pandemic. And I could easily see not focusing on your own personal environment and construction projects, especially when you don't know who else could be able to work and under what conditions they might be able to work. I think it's really hard to pull this out into the generic level, which I would hope that we could, in the sense of any action that we take applies to every building permit out there, and in whatever stage that it's in. It happens that this is the one that's most stale. But I'm struggling for a way to arrive at a view that is non-destructive of our environment generally and of our public relations specifically, to act on this And if there's no, let's say, unplanned drastic environmental change that is occurring, it seems to me that the changes that are occurring at that property are all part of the plan for that property. Then I don't have any problem extending the extra time that planning staff is suggesting should be extended.
Thank you, David. Who else would like to speak on this? Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, this is really difficult, obviously, and I appreciate Mr. Hernandez's dedication in trying to, work to help this pandemic. That's admirable, and I'd like us to do everything we can to try to help that. But you got to take a step back here and look at what we're doing for the town in this whole thing. And David, I understand your comments too, and I'm sympathetic to them. But first off, this is year 3. Okay, this has been going on for a long time. This, and it should have been and could have been approved before the pandemic took place. There were extensions granted. The extension on this expired May 16th, and the last application came in June 29th. Was the town operating then? Yes, it absolutely was. I have clients who were applying to the building department, architects who were getting plans approved. The town has been sending inspectors out to inspect the property, make revisions, change things, and do that. So the town has been operating. Is it as easy as it used to be? No, it's not. But can you talk to people? Yes. You can call them up and call them on the phone. They communicate really well by email. And this has been a very, very difficult time for the town, no doubt. But it has been possible to get approval for plans. And the thing I keep coming back to is this expired May 16th. And the request came in June 29th. And I am not thrilled at all with the precedent of doing a resolution and changing the law for one case. And that's what we're doing here tonight. I think that's bad precedent. We should not be doing that for the town. And as difficult as this is, this project has been going on for a long time, but I would not approve this extension. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Fred, would you like to speak on this?
Yeah, I would echo some of Bob's comments as far as respect to like it been going on for 3 years. Again, when I asked Adam, the town offices were still open, so there could have been communications back and forth. And unless I'm wrong, Adam, it sounds like there was a lack of communication that was going on during that time period, where again, people could have reached out to you. And I think the other thing is also, again, like Bob mentioned, it expired on May 16th. To me, if there was some communication, either January, just sometime before that, providing an update to town staff, I think that would have gone further. But again, I just get the feeling that there was a lack of communication coming from the applicant. And I also agree with Bob that I think that when we have these single off ordinances that we're doing basically for one, I don't agree with that. To me, it just doesn't make sense as a town that we should be doing that kind of an ordinance just to favor one person or one household. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, Bob, go ahead. Oh, you're muted though.
Thank you. Sorry. So I just wanted to clarify. The first draft of a building permit was submitted in August 2019, Adam, correct?
Yes, correct.
And then you didn't hear anything else? You didn't get anything else till June 29th, 2020?
No, but it's not to say there weren't communications with the applicant and the architect during that time. I think I did get an email from the architect at the beginning of the pandemic, and I think in maybe early April, asking if we were still accepting plans, and I said yes. And I think even earlier in the year, there were discussions regarding some of the comments that we had provided in our comment letter, basically to the first draft of the building permit, and some of those related to planning matters. And so I know I discussed that with the architect and Joel. I don't know the date, but it was winter time at some point. So that's not that there was no communication. It was just we never received an official resubmittal to the application. And then as it got closer during the pandemic, there was no communication from obviously, Joel or the applicant on concerns about the date being, I think the last extension was actually was granted in November for an additional 6 months until the end of till May 16th. And so, in any case, if you have more questions about that, I can try to get specifics.
That's good. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I guess I'll just share where I stand on this too. Definitely a difficult one for sure. I think I personally don't see this as tied to any one project. And if I did, I certainly would not support it. I think, what's the term for that, Teresa? Like a bill of attainder or something, when a body passes a law that's like targeted at one person or one entity. And I would not support that either. I think what Fred said is right. The town has no business, passing a resolution to specifically help out, one resident. But I don't see this as tied to one project. To me, this is kind of a question of principle, right? It's like, it seems to me like, the pandemic very obviously causes delays in what people are able to accomplish. Not necessarily because, the town wasn't open, but maybe because their own personal circumstances have changed. But I think in this case, it doesn't seem that the pandemic would have also changed, the merits on which the original permit was granted. So, it seems to me like sort of just a matter of principle there, where it's like, the sort of the merits of the original decision, I think, aren't really changed by these circumstances. And then another thing I'll say is that to me, I see this as a legislative decision. It's not like, we're not sitting in our quasi-judicial capacity. So I'm not really interested in making a judgment on whether or not this delay request, this request that came in was made in good faith, or whether or not, the applicant communicated well or not. I mean, to me, that's just kind of all besides the point. And again, to me, that kind of gets back to making this about one project, when in fact, I think, as Adam said, it could very conceivably, it's not unreasonable at all to think that this action may apply to other projects ongoing in town before the action expires. So I guess that's kind of where I stand. Let me know if you guys disagree, and I guess let's just keep kind of hashing it out for a little while and see if we can get anywhere.
I guess one question for Adam is, how many projects does this apply to, or would apply to? Because if I read it right, it's only during permits that would have been issued during a certain period of time, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So it would apply to any permit that was still active. And again, the permits that were listed, so those are the conditional use permits, the design review and sign permits, etc., that were still active after March 16th, 2020, and that were basically issued or not issued on June 1st. Let me try to explain. So it would apply to anything that was still active after March 16th, 2020, and was obviously approved prior to that date, but not to permits that were issued on June 1st, 2020 or afterwards. So I'm gonna try to pull up some information, and this is actually an advantage of sitting at my desk here. I might be able to actually, I have a list of entitlements, and again, planning entitlements, which is most of what this affects, although it would apply to also tree permits, and I don't have a good handle on actually how many tree permits are out there that haven't been completed. But in general, let's say, this is, I'm going to give you, let's see, about, let's say approximately 20.
That this would apply to?
Yes. No.
Are any of those the type where it would be in your purview to extend them for a year without this?
Yes, and in fact, I think there's 2 already that we've had discussions with permit holders who have been affected by coronavirus, but they're in their first year of that being granted that permit. And so staff has the ability under the code to grant an additional year extension, and as I mentioned, up to even 3 years in certain circumstances. But clearly, an additional year can be extended. And my belief, frankly, is that I think it was in Margaret's letter when I spoke to her. I generally grant those because I think it's reasonable to allow up to 2 years to get that building permit done. There is an evaluation of whether circumstances have changed in that extension that is granted, but I don't recall one that I've not granted at this point in time. So yes, 2 we're aware of, and the other ones of those 20, I would say the majority of them are in their first year. So staff would have the ability, actually all of them, staff would still have the ability at the staff level to grant those extensions. What would happen here, the extension request would actually not be necessary for an additional number of days if the resolution was granted. So that first year of sort of the validity of that first year of the permit, it wouldn't expire for an additional period of time, and then but staff could then still grant that request for another year from that date.
So we're just back to the thing that the only one that this ordinance would apply to is 159 Prince Royale, because it sounds like the other ones are under your purview.
Well, no, it would apply to all the permits. So essentially, if you, let me give an example. You were, we granted an approval on January 1st, 2020 for a design review application. Typically, 1 year would be up January, 2021, January 1st, 2021. And before that date, you would have to apply for an extension of 1 year. If this resolution, if the council decided that it was wise to pass this resolution, then that January 1st, 2021 date would be extended by a certain number of days, whether that's 90 or 120 days. So actually that extension request would not be necessary until, let's say it was 120 days, that's 4 months, so May 1st, 2021.
Yeah, but I think what Fred is asking, correct me if I'm wrong, is how many of those 20 projects are on their last life, so to speak?
None of them, but I just want to make clear that it's not necessarily correct to say that this wouldn't apply to the other projects.
Okay.
The other projects would still get the benefit of the additional time. It's just that it would effectively extend out the 3-year period should any of them need it, that additional time period.
Okay, Bob, I see. I'll get to you in 1 sec. I just wanted to float an idea, like maybe a possible compromise measure, because I don't think that that's what is initially written in here already. What if we did 120 extension, but at staff's discretion per project? What are people's thoughts about that? Does that kind of, given that you guys already have discretionary, authority over X number of extensions, maybe instead of saying we're doing an automatic extension, we say we're doing an additional COVID staff discretionary extension.
I guess question is, Teresa, is that something we could do, or is that an option?
So my concerns would be operational. You're now going to require a case-by-case analysis in every one of those cases, which is going to take up a lot of staff time. And then staff is going to have to develop criteria for why do you need the delay. And I think probably anybody could make a claim that they need the delay because of COVID. Certainly someone who is a frontline worker would be able to make that claim, but even folks who weren't can point to difficulties that their architect or other professionals may have had in terms of trying to get the work done during that period of time. So I guess it's not really a legal issue, it's a practical issue about what are you accomplishing and what are you putting on staff. So I would be interested to hear what Adam has to say about that, but I think it's probably a lot of burden for very little benefit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it, from my perspective, the criteria would be the hard thing. What am I evaluating a claim, and under what circumstances would I not grant an extension for a COVID-19 claim? I think that would be a challenging one to assess.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think what Teresa just said kind of got back to what I was feeling initially, which is, I don't think that our job here tonight is to decide who's, to decide whose request for an extension is valid due to how COVID may or may not have affected them and whose isn't. Anyways, let's go Bob and then David.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the point again in this specific case, and I know you don't want to talk about this specific case, but this is year 3 of an extension. And Adam, typically we grant year 2, but year 3 usually requires some sort of special circumstances, and that's already been granted in this case, this year 3, and we are past year 3. So we are giving another extension to something that has gone past year 3. And year 3 is unusual, correct, Adam? I mean, that's typically not granted. I mean, this has been dragging on for a long time. There's been a lot of time to resolve this, and it hasn't been resolved before COVID hit. And I think we are, Eli, I understand your point, but I think we are making an exception here for one case, and I think that is a terrible precedent to be setting for the town.
Yeah, I mean, if I felt the same, I would agree, with you, because I don't support that precedent either. I guess I don't see it that way because Adam has told us that there are, some 20 odd projects to which this might apply. David?
I wanted to remind us all that, we've been spoiled to some extent because our planning staff and our building staff have been very careful to create online methodologies, and they have really taken exceptional steps to make it possible for people to make progress. But I would also suggest that because we are biased, we know that excellent work that's happened. Most folks out there didn't know what the heck was coming in March. They didn't know what the heck was coming in April. And especially if they're frontline, they are not going to have any focus on taking care of their own nest. And I would also say the only thing that's really changed in this particular circumstance is that the ADU is being built. Maybe that could be ultimately a source of income or additional family, I don't know. But that's downhill, and that is stabilizing the hillside. So maybe it is a necessary precursor for any commencement of work uphill. But here's my big question. What is the injury that we're trying to prevent? Other than sloppiness or administrative inconsistency with our rules, what is the injury to the public or to the town if somebody is extended and goes longer than expected? I would say I am aware of some circumstances like the one on Christmas Tree Hill that took 25 years to get finished and even have a parking place in it. Fortunately, it's being finished right now. But what is the injury? What are we trying to prevent?
And I'll just jump in real fast. Since you mentioned 25 years, I'll just say that if we approve this tonight, I think 120 days under Corona is fair warning, and I would not extend this again. But anyway, anyone who wants to speak, please go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I would raise is your back thing so what happens when the next person comes and it's 3 years, are we going to extend that one also? Or if it goes 4 years? I think that's based upon what David had just said. It seems like the rule right now is 3 years, but now we're making an exception. So where do we draw the line if a year from now somebody has the same type issue and they want to go out past 3 years? Are we going to sit there and say, no, because there's a vaccine for the virus now, so there's no excuse, I want to say? I mean, which way do we go on that? Where do you draw the line and start making exceptions down the road?
Yeah, I mean, I would see this, especially as it relates to this pandemic, as a one-shot deal. I mean, I think the pandemic has, when you're looking at the time frame of a building project, the pandemic has just begun, right? We're like 3 months in. That's not a huge amount of time, for a building project. But I certainly, another 3 months down the road, well, now we've been in the pandemic for half a year, and it's not, you can't really claim that you didn't see it coming. Bob, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can tell you from experience, one of the biggest ongoing issues we have are building projects that go on too long and we get complaints to council. So that is the injury. It's a problem for neighbors. They don't like it. It's a problem with construction. It's ugly, you know, and it bothers people, and we hear about it. That's the thing. And again, I want to emphasize the norm is 2 years. This was granted a special exception into year 3, and we're already past that. And I think we are making a special case out of this. And I think, again, bad precedent, really bad precedent.
It sounds to me like we're all hearing each other, but we just see it differently. And I would be okay with just proceeding on this. I'm not going to feel too beat up if we have a split vote on this, given that it's not, you know, it's not an issue that's going to tear at the fabric of our town. If somebody wants to make a motion that we consider this, we can vote on it. If anybody else has any comments that they'd like to make, please make them.
Have we abandoned your suggestion that it be a staff call?
I'm ready to abandon it just based on what we heard from Adam and Teresa. I mean, you know, it sounds like it's not, okay. It's not it's not a practical solution as I'd hoped. So David, just to clarify, it sounds like if a motion is to be made, I think the mayor generally doesn't make motions unless nobody else will.
I'll make a motion that we adopt what is this called? Resolution number 28-2020 of the town of Corte Madera to extend the lapse date for certain types of entitlements by 120 days due to delays and impacts caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, etc.
I'll second that. Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Casissa?
Vote no.
Councilmember Lee? Oh, excused. Councilmember Ravazio?
No.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes. So the resolution is not adopted, and that concludes item 6E. Charles may come back. And that brings us to 6F, which is consideration and possible action to approve plans and specifications and authorize a public works director to advertise for bids for the Redwood Highway Pathway and Landscaping Improvement Project number 16001.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm going to bring forward Chris Good, our senior civil engineer, and also Russell Prange, a landscape architect with WRA Environmental Consultants. And I'm also going to put on a short presentation. Okay, hopefully everyone can see the screen here. So the Redwood Highway Path has been in development for many years, dating back to at least 2016. It's a path that is used for pedestrians and cyclists and you know, other users. It's you know, very popular with children that are making their way from you know, the Bayside neighborhoods, you know, down Warnham to the Sandra Market Trail and the schools. It's, as you'll see, quite degraded. It's got a number of areas where the roots from trees have uplifted the pavement. These are safety concerns, and they also occur on the roadway, and this project would address both of these. Early in this project, we realized that you know, we were going to need to do some arborist investigation. WRA was retained to perform that effort, and they concluded their arborist report in January, at which time we brought that information to various public outreaches. We spoke with BPAC, we spoke with the Beautification Committee, we put this information on the town website. We even posted posters on the path, next door posts, and all sorts of other things. Really just trying to get the information out that, you know, really the only way to improve the pathway is to do a new landscaping project. And kind of address these trees that were planted in the 80s and try to improve it and make it more sustainable and drought tolerant and native species. So I'm not going to get into too many of the details. I'll leave that to our specialist here, but I'm going to move through a couple more other slides. So these are the trees that are being proposed for removal. Italian stone pine, Peruvian pepper, silver, dollar gum, eucalyptus, silver, wattle, acacia. And I'm gonna, as we get into the proposed landscape and design, I'm gonna hand it over to Russell Prange to speak to that and the overall sustainable benefits. Russell, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So these are a list of trees we are proposing to replace the trees that RJ mentioned we would be removing. And so these are based on a number of criteria, looking at the town's street tree program, trees that would remain small and not cause future damage and problems to the improved trail in the future. Trees that would be drought tolerant, trees that would be hardy in sort of an urban environment where planting strips are narrow, where urban soils aren't great, trees that would provide some aesthetic value with flowering in the spring and summer and even some leaf color in the fall. And then even some trees that are either native or native cultivars to the area. And so kind of when you look at those criteria, these three really stood out in the design. And so we've designed them in a way that would be a continuous sort of row of trees along the edge of the trail, except for a few areas where there would be driveways and where you would need a line of sight, for traffic and pedestrians. And in those areas, we looked at kind of keeping it simple. Looking at more native grasses and native ground cover. There's a lot of other kind of perennial plantings with color in the median, in the new north parking lot, in the shopping center area. So this was more about kind of keeping it low maintenance and simple. And so
Russell, can you speak to the salvage and reuse of the mulch?
Yeah, that's one benefit that especially from the Italian stone pines. I think we can when the trees are removed, they can be ground up and reused as mulch for the planting areas underneath the trees. And so those would be areas that would, all the weeds would be suppressed, and it would help to maintain the planting strips with that mulch, and you wouldn't have to bring in and buy new mulch. We would not do that with some of the eucalyptus that are being removed. We would not use those for mulch. Just, they have properties that inhibit, certain plant growth, so we wouldn't do that.
And that mulch also assists with minimizing the amount of water needed to water the plants. So it's a conservation measure as well.
That's right. That's right. These will all be, they'll need irrigation when they get first planted, just like any plant, but they'll be connected to a drip system, sort of with the minimum amount of water needed to get established. And these are all low or very low water use plants. So they'll have that drip irrigation supplied to them, and then the addition of the mulch will, help to retain that moisture and help these plants thrive under low water conditions.
Sorry guys, where exactly are we? Right? Is that driveway one of the entrances to the I don't know what it's called now, formerly the gravel parking lot?
Yeah, that's the north lot. So that's okay. The eastern driveway, and we can go through the whole thing, but we just thought this was a representative look at
awesome.
One of the designs.
Yeah, that's great.
There is an area further north that has some is it crepe myrtles that will remain. Those were not causing damage and had been planted 5 to 10 years ago, if I understand correctly. So it really was, this overall plan was reviewed at, if we go through rehabilitate the path, the only way to do that is to, mill and rework the soil. And so you're going to assume some root damage as part of that analysis. it was deemed that many of those trees would not survive.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the area of planting is from where Redwood Highway turns to the north at the Nordstrom, and then it's all the way south from there, sort of all the way, down to Macy's. So it's that whole stretch where these new trees would be going.
Any questions?
Any questions from council here? Fred?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just two quick questions. One is, and I can't remember, is that path going to be widened a couple of feet? I thought I saw something about that, but I can't remember. And the other question is, I know we're doing major improvements on Tamalpais. Now we're going to be doing improvements on Redwood Highway. Is there any plan to do any improvements where Warnham is? Because I know going under the overpass, that path is really beat up. It just seems like we're going to have nice new path, and then the connector is somewhat run down, I want to say.
Right. Chris can correct me if I'm wrong. For the most part, the current path at Redwood Highway is about 8 feet, except for there are a couple pinch point areas. But we were able to go in and get a consistent 8 foot with 2 foot shoulders on either side. Mm-hmm. So even though the paved width is about the same, you're going to feel like it's wider because of that usable 2 feet that often many pedestrians prefer to walk on, because it's kind of easier on your impact of your feet and on your back. If you've been to Mill Valley Sausalito Path, that's a good example one. As for the connector, that is part of our Central Marin Regional Pathways project that we're wrapping up the design on. We're going to continue to fight for other grant funds, ATP and others for construction, but that is in development, and we hope that'll move forward soon.
Thanks.
Yeah.
One of my questions is going to be the same. There's a very, very bumbly surface on the Warnham Drive bike path. But Russell, if you could please just revisit the trees that you plan to be planting. I think you said wild lilac, crepe myrtle, and strawberry tree. What's a strawberry tree? Are those is that it? Are those the three? Period.
Those are the three, yes, and they would be kind of planted in groupings of 5 to 3 with each kind of grouping, and kind of alternating along the stretch of roadway.
Are they all deciduous?
No, these are, they can be deciduous, but for the most part they're evergreen. I think the crepe myrtle will shed some leaves. It will change color. Would be considered mostly deciduous. The other two are evergreen.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
So I have a few questions. So I understand that this is really about a trail kind of revitalization, but also the median has some trees and other bushes that are old and past kind of healthy. And especially if they're fire prone or nuisance, I was wondering if we could explore at least replacing those. The other question I had was, it's great that you're using the mulch, but are you going to do weed control? So ultimately we don't have to go back and weed, with cardboard boxes underneath the mulch or something a little bit more, appropriate. And then also, I don't know if you've been over to Larkspur Landing lately, but they removed a lot of the eucalyptus, and ultimately they didn't mulch them, but they did use them as edging and also furniture. And so, if they're of a good enough size, creating some kind of wildlife, catch or something like that nearby might be a nice use instead of just seeing them go to other uses, keep them on site. So if you could explore those, I guess they're not really questions as much as, but if you're interested in that, and then also why we didn't, and then, so the real question I have is ultimately we also on the Planning Commission approved redoing all the trees in the parking lot of the village. And so have you reviewed that, and are these trees compatible or in the same kind of family and types as the ones that are going to be used in the village? Because I think it'd be nice to ultimately tie those two things together so that there's a more coherent overall kind of plan in that area. So I was just wondering if that had been considered in the selection of these as among the other things that are great that you used as selection criteria.
You know, I don't have an answer on the, you know, coordination of the village. I do know that we will be putting a weed barrier in. So that's definitely part of the standard process for overall low maintenance goals. And then, yeah, I'll definitely take a look at this idea about edging and using some of the large trunks if possible to provide a nice feature. We would put those somewhat away from the path so it's not also a physical obstruction should someone veer off slightly.
Yeah, the most recent work they did that was over by Shake Shack if you want to go check it out.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Just yeah, I guess you can't confirm it now about the village, but
okay. I was just going to ask. I saw you said preferably native species. I was just wondering if we can switch that to exclusively native species.
It's pretty difficult in this sort of planting environment to find straight native species that will work with kind of all the criteria we're working with. You know, even none of these are straight species. They're all either straight native. They're all either native cultivars or not native. So the wild lilac's a native cultivar. The strawberry tree is a native cultivar. Crepe myrtles is straight up not native. You know, so if it's the town's preference, we could get rid of the crepe myrtle. I think.
Sorry, just for my education, what is it? What is a native cultivar?
Oh, that's fine. It's just a plant that, you know, is taken, you know, it's native to, you know, to the area, but it's been cultivated, you know, in nurseries in a way, you know, for certain qualities of the plant. So it's a specifically kind of a nursery cultivated plant. You know, when you're looking at doing you know, a restoration project or something like that, where you're only using natives, you wouldn't use cultivars, but in
Sure.
more urban traditional landscape design arenas, they're often used. And
so is it the difference between like a wolf and a domesticated dog, but with plants? So it's a domesticated Latin or native. Is that really what you're getting at?
Yeah, maybe not that sort of far apart genetically, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, native cultivar seems fine, but you know, I do think that habitat restoration and like ecological restoration is really important. I think that should be a component of everything that the town does, especially anything that involves planting. So I would ask, you know, I guess I'm unclear on why it might be that there are no native species that could possibly work for our project here.
That's just the nature of native species in Marin. You know, any native tree is going to be a larger tree that's going to not work in this sort of contained urban environment, and then you go from large trees, but then you can go to more of a shrub. So like there's a redbud shrub that we considered, but that often is, you can train it into a tree, but it's often kind of stays as a shrub. And so
I'm gonna ask a question quick to help Eli. So Russell, when you talk about the soil conditions, it's really a wetland that has been, you know, kind of reconditioned. And so therefore, if you look at the old pictures of the wetlands, there were no trees, right? There were hardly even bushes. So it's the soil quality and everything. These trees have adapted somewhere else in California or somewhere in the world under this temperate zone that ultimately make them applicable to this kind of use. And the fact that we want trees versus bushes or something that truly is a native restoration landscape in the medians versus, you know, out further into the wetlands, is that really the discussion and your perspective to help you like kind of understand why you would go that way?
It's probably a little different than that. I think all the soils, you know, are likely not wetland soils. They're fill, you know, that was brought in, you know, with low nutrient quality and things like that. And so, you know, those are the types of soils where these trees will thrive. But you're right in the fact that, you know, in the past, in a native setting, you know, this area was not forested. You know, up to the wetland there would be some shrubs and ground cover and things like that. So,
okay,
you
so
know, it's just depends on the town's preference.
Your feeling is that native plants would not thrive or be so healthy in this soil because it's low nutrient fill?
No, they could. They definitely could, because they're typically, pretty hardy. Not all of them, but some of them certainly could. It's just going back to like what I said. There's no native plants as far as that fit the other qualities. A small tree.
Yeah, look, I don't want to, I know it's late. I don't want to take up too much of our time talking about native plants here, but that is very important to me. So maybe we'll touch on this again after we get some public comment in here and see if there's a way that we can maybe adjust our criteria for this project or something. But anyways, are there any other council comments before we go to public, or council questions before we go to public comment? No? Okay. We will take public comment on this item. If you'd like to comment on this, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Our first comment is going to be from Peter Chase.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. We do a lot of planting in our work as a construction company, and the Arbutus marina, the Australian strawberry, is a go-to plant, and the crepe myrtle are go-to trees as trees that withstand rigor and are non-invasive, and they're really stand by, and they're pretty, and they don't cause problems down the road. There are just no native species that grow as nicely as these do, and the Australian strawberry is a evergreen tree. So I heartily stand behind Mr. Good's recommendations for these trees along the street. I think they're the right ones for the right place. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We do not have any other hands up at this time. Rebecca, are there any emailed public comments on this?
We have not received any emailed public comments.
Okay, then we will close public comment. Oh, Pat Ravazio has just put her hand up, so we will reopen public comment and come back to Pat.
Hi, sorry I got in there just a little bit late. I just want to echo that the plant selection, the tree selection looks really good. I know from being on the beautification committee for many years, we did make some mistakes with trees that would later uproot the sidewalks and so forth. And if these trees don't do that, that's just a miracle. And we should accept that they've been, bred to be smaller. The only question, the only thing I would throw in is, we really do need to be looking out for pollinators. So rather than just being a stickler to native plantings, I would prefer instead to, if we have decisions to make about one tree versus another, that we look at which ones really do attract and protect and nurture our pollinators. And I just want to say thank you guys for your work on this. I can't believe all this is still going on during COVID. You are killing it. Corte Madera is looking good and doing great things. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Alrighty, and with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council for council comments. Does anybody have a comment to make, Fred?
Yeah, I just want to thank staff, echo kind of what Pat said, because I think this project, it's a long time coming, because that path right now, it's somewhat is a little bit dangerous. Just two suggestions to staff. One is when you get closer or around that period when you're going to start the project, you may want to coordinate with the schools, because I think that's a safe route to school. And if that path is unusable because of the work that's going on with it, I think the schools just need to be informed about that. And the other thing is you may want to consider, I think across from Macy's, I'm not sure what they call, like a traffic type sign, again, a little ahead of the project, just warning people that on whatever dates that path is going to be closed. And I would assume you may have to close down one lane also. But those are my only comments. And again, I think a great job by staff again.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, a couple things. I've been working on this for 4 years with BPAC. We actually started this in 2016. And I don't know if any of you have been on the trail recently. It's in terrible shape. It is really a wreck. And the reason it's a wreck is because of trees and tree roots. We thought when this all started, we were just going to repave it, and we thought it'd be a simple, quick, and expensive fix. And then we found out, oh no, you've got to pull the trees out, then you got to replace them with other trees. So this has been a long process to get to this point. But I think it is a critical project, and I'm thrilled that we're looking at it this way tonight, because this is an incredibly important connection between the east side of town and the west side of town. It's an incredibly important connection for school children, as Fred just pointed out, You know, we've redone the connection between Warnham and the Sandra Market Trail. You know, we've spent money to redo the signals there to make that safer for kids to cross. There's going to be improvements made on Warnham as well. But we really want to continue to make this path as a better mechanism for kids to be able to ride their bikes to school, as well as recreational users. So I'm just really, really happy that we're finally getting to the point where we're actually going to bid this out. As I said, it's been a long process to get here, and I think staff's done an amazing job to get to this point, because it has been difficult, as I said. And we are going to, one of the other things that we're aware of is, you know, when this comes out, there's going to be a lot of public comment, you know, like, you know, my gosh, what happened? You know, why are the trees coming out? So we have to be prepared to talk about the kind of trees we're going to put back in and why we're doing that. But I'm really happy that we're moving ahead with this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments? David, and then Charles.
So the project is taking longer than 3 years? Should we really permit that? I'm just kidding. I got to pull your leg once in a while. Ditto to everything that Fred said. I think this is really cool. Looking forward to it. And yes, let's notify school district.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah, so you know, I just wanted to talk about landscape and natives. I too wish that basically we could have native California. California's beautiful, right? But this is kind of it's a median. It's the strip between the path and then the road. So I don't even know if ultimately you want to encourage wildlife to occupy that space. If it was on the other
deer, but like bugs.
Fine, but yeah, I mean, but these trees flower, right? And you know, birds will still roost in them. I'm sure. I don't think it's excluding them or wildlife. I think it'll still enhance it. And so I guess in this instance, because of all the other things in the recommendation of a professional about the use of them, I would just also echo that I think that they then are the appropriate choice in this case. My only thing is ultimately if it's on the other side of the path and there isn't trees, it's more these grasses and stuff that then they are California native grasses. And that they do try to enhance, you know, that waterway and the fowl and everything in there, right? So I guess I kind of see both sides of it. But trees in particular, you know, I think in this case they've made a good case about why we should accept them. And then the only other thing is once again, some of the bushes in that median. I do ride that path occasionally, and they're looking old and rugged, and they haven't died like some of the other trees over there from the drought, but they definitely look like they're fire prone and other things. And you know, if we could get some kind of consistency of landscaping over there so it looks intentional instead of a hodgepodge over the years, not for good reasons, because you know we could explore that in this project as, you know, I don't know, but that's really what I hope. So those are my last feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't want to vote no on this project over the tree selection. You know, this project is about the path, and that needs to happen, and that is happening. So that's good. But I do have a big problem with, you know, Corte Madera actively perpetuating the planting of species, you know, that are not native and continuing, you know, kind of disturbing the ecosystem here. And you know, to Pat's comment, it's not about being a stickler for native species per se. It's about the whole ecosystem. Like she was saying, you know, it's about the pollinators. It's about the animal and the other plant life that, you know, that is naturally supposed to be here and is in some cases struggling to continue to be here because of the way that we have altered the ecosystem here. So I don't feel good about introducing straight up non-native species. I think native cultivars is fine. Definitely understand you know, that we don't want trees that are going to cause, you know, damage to our new path. That makes perfect sense. Anyways, that's, you know, those are my thoughts on the matter, and I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Yeah, this is Fred. I'll make a motion that we approve plans and specifications and authorize Public Work Director to advertise for Redwood Highway Pathway and Landscaping Improvement Project, which is number 16001.
I'll second.
Great, thanks. Can we have a vote, please, Rebecca?
Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes. Alrighty, thank you. That concludes our business items and brings us to town manager and council reports. Todd, do you have a report for us?
Just real quick, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we have been giving weekly updates on the current order in place, and so anyone that would like any updates, I would refer them to save some time to the first 10 minutes of our meeting today in our community chat. As we discussed that, but I'm happy to answer any questions offline as well. Just three really quick things. July 10th is the deadline for public entities to submit for grant funding through the CARES Act. And so Corte Madera, we have submitted that application, and Corte Madera appears to be allotted for $124,000 in reimbursements. And so we do meet that criteria, and so we expect to receive that revenue in the coming months. And staff also, and I'm not sure if it's Adam and RJ's team, I think they were both involved, but they did submit a $20,000 grant through TAM, the Transportation Authority of Marin. And we're gonna use that funding if we do, we don't know if we received it, but if we do receive that grant, our intent is to use it for tables and chairs to support restaurants and businesses on our parklets. And so we're excited about that with a recent ordinance that we passed. Burmatown is getting a parklet later this week, and the Cave Gym has applied for outdoor use in the parking lot. So, you know, we're starting to see some good support with our local businesses in that arena. And lastly, the Lark Theater has contacted staff in Maceridge, and they're working towards the possibility of holding a few drive-in movies over at the old gravel lot. So our new and improved lot, I should say, out from Nordstrom. And so we're working with them to see if we can make that happen in the coming weeks. And so look out for that, and I'll continue to keep the council updated on that status. But I think that would be a nice opportunity for our community as well moving forward. But we still have a few things to work through. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. We'll go through the council for reports. Start with you, Fred. Do you have anything to report?
Yeah, nothing to report.
Awesome. Charles?
Yeah, so I did attend the TAM commission, and as Todd alluded, they have been evaluating the effects of COVID on all transportation and transportation projects and seeing if there were appropriate allocations to help local communities. And this program that they applied to is one of them. It's ultimately an enabling project for towns to quickly, address immediate needs in streets and evaluation. So that was a really good program, but overall they had 2 or 3 really good presentations overall, while they evaluated all of their main tenets and how to basically evaluate budget decisions in the coming year, given the current situation with telecommuting and everything else. They've been giving a lot of really good resources from Caltrans and others about the impacts of telecommuting. And I think that they're going to continue that discussion for the next couple months. So if you're definitely interested in it, it has been more than just kind of, monthly standard kind of discussions, but big decisions moving forward. And so therefore it's far more engaging, and your input could be great in it. And then also I attended the Safe Paths to School, and we identified a few areas and are still trying to move forward with trying to help deal with the upcoming school year. And then also I visited the town park with RJ and evaluated what they were doing to rehab the restroom that we approved, and it's looking really good. And I think that it's a really good use of our funds. So that's all.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles. Bob?
Nothing to report.
Awesome. David?
MCE took the week off last week from 2 previously planned meetings, but I did attend the what used to be the Twin Cities Disaster Preparedness Committee and is rapidly being renamed Central Marin Disaster Preparedness Committee, because we are reaching out to Kentfield and trying to go around and have fire preparation in particular incorporate all of the facets of Mount Tam and the adjoining hills. We had Chief Martin with us, who brought us up to speed on all of the new things that are being done under the JPA, and the fire prevention JPA, and there's quite a bit of fast tracking going on. And the county fire folks have contributed some staff, and already both in Larkspur and in Corte Madera, the defensible space folks have been out. I got a little report card and know what I need to do to my property to clean up some stuff on the lower part of our property, which I don't often see. And so they're all around and very active. So they really have begun, I think, almost a month early, and it's pretty nifty.
Awesome, thank you. I have two quick items, both of which I think happened since our last meeting. We had a workshop on the climate adaptation plan on June 18th. That was pretty well attended. That went well. Just a public discussion, getting some input on the status of the plan, and there was some polling conducted during that workshop, which was really helpful to the team, I think. And then we had a police council meeting on June 22nd, kind of a policy discussion, just responding to the whole public discourse going on around policing. And I thought it was a really good and healthy conversation. It was not the end of the conversation, but it was definitely a solid beginning to it. And that is all I have to report. There is no draft agenda because the next meeting is canceled, but we do have an SD2 meeting. Hooray. So we're going to go ahead and adjourn this town council meeting and then move into our SD2 meeting. So the town council meeting is adjourned, and we are going to convene the Tuesday, July 7th meeting of Sanitary District 2. Alrighty. We're going to wave the salute to the flag because we did that for the council meeting. Rebecca, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Board Member Casissa?
Here.
Board Member Lee?
Here.
Board Member Ravazio?
Here.
Board Vice President Kuhnhart?
Here.
Board President Beckman?
Here. Thank you. We'll have open time for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to items not on the agenda. Members of the public have 3 minutes each. You can either raise your hand in Zoom to comment or email your comment to publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Rebecca, do we have any email comments?
We have not received any email public comments.
We do not have any hands up either. I will say we have a striking number of attendees on the line for an SD2 meeting. So we're going to go ahead and close public comment. There are no presentations, so that brings us to the consent calendar. These are items that are routine or have already been discussed and do not require further discussion. Are there any members of the board who would like to pull an item? Seeing none, are there any members of the public who would like to comment on a consent calendar item or pull a consent calendar item? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Move to approve items 4A through 4C.
Second.
Great. Rebecca, whenever you're ready.
Board Member Casissa?
Yes.
Board Member Lee?
Yes.
Board Member Ravazio?
Yes.
Board Vice President Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Board President Beckman?
Yes. Thank you. That's the consent calendar. There are no public hearings. Next item is 6A, consideration and possible action to adopt resolution 03-2020 approving the revised budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. Is that you, Daria?
Yes. Thank you. This item is revising the budget that had also been adopted in June 2019 as part of the 2-year budget. In this case, the sanitary district is not affected in the same way as the town by the COVID-19 emergency. The sanitary district does not receive sales tax, and so it's not affected by that. It receives 52% of its income from property tax and 44% from sewer user fees. So that's not expected to be affected at all. The revisions are all to expenditures. Operating expenses are increasing by about $89,000. As I mentioned in the previous budget revision for the town, the sanitary district is expected to pay the town an additional $359,000 for sanitary district work, but that is partially offset by CMSA pump station expenditures, which we revised down by $305,000 based on information received from CMSA. Grants and loan programs are increased by $1,130,000. $995,000 of that is from the current year that hasn't been spent. There was money budgeted that just, people didn't take advantage of and wasn't spent. And also included in this year's budget is the private sewer lateral loan program. And through this program, the town would pay for work done on private property and recover the amount paid through payments added to property tax bills in the future. And then there's a list of capital expenditure projects that is included, and the expenditures are $62,000 less than in the original budget. If this budget is approved, there will be a reserve or an ending balance of about $4.4 million. And on top of that, there will be another $2.5 million reserve. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you, Daria. Are there any questions from board members on this item? Seeing none, we'll open it up to public comment. If there's any public comment on this, please raise your hand. First will be Roy Wolford.
Question for Daria. On the PSL or the lateral work, did you say that the town is going to assess a bill on the property tax for the property owner? Did I hear that correctly?
There's a private sewer lateral loan program, it's called, in the budget for $50,000. Yes, and if people applied for that, it would be a loan.
Oh,
it would,
okay.
Yeah, it would be a loan. It would be repaid through the property tax bill.
Thank you.
If I could jump in for a moment. So that's an item that we'd like to bring before the board at one of the upcoming meetings for discussion. But there are other districts that have this policy out there in this program. And so we're kind of mirroring that. Ross Valley is one of them. And, we want it to be considered given the state of the overall economy and implications from COVID. And so we plan to bring that in August or early September.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is that all, Roy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Roy. No other hands up at this time. Rebecca, do we have any emailed public comments?
We have not received any emailed public comment, but I did have a question for the town attorney since we're in the sanitary district meeting at the moment. Will we need to take a vote at 9:30 to extend the meeting till 10, or did that only apply to the council meeting? We do.
It applies. It applies.
Oh, okay. Alrighty, thank you. We will close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion, or if there's no comments, motion.
I'd like to move resolution number 03-2020, accepting and directing the amended 2020-2021 budget.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Rebecca, can we have a vote, please?
Board Member Casissa?
Yes.
Board Member Lee?
Yes.
Board Member Ravazio?
Yes.
Board Vice President Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Board President Beckman?
Yes. Alrighty. Thank you, Daria. I think you're free to go. Have a good night. That brings us to 6B, which is consideration and possible action to amend the Sanitary District 2 Lower Lateral Capital Improvement Project Pilot Program and Private Sewer Lateral Pilot Grant Program, and to extend the term of the program by 2 additional years and modify the budgets.
Thank you, President Beckman and members of the board. I have a short presentation that I'm going to roll through as quickly as possible, but there's a decent amount of information here, so I'm going to try to cover it quickly.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that you go ahead and take that vote.
Oh, yeah.
We're just about 9:30 now.
Thank you, Teresa. Can I get a motion, please, to extend this meeting for, what is it, a half hour? Is that the move?
So moved.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
All right,
Second.
Rebecca?
Board Member Casissa?
Yes.
Board Member Lee,
Yes.
Board Member Ravazio,
Yes.
Board Vice President Kuhnhart,
Yes.
Board President Beckman.
Yay. All right.
Great, thank you. So the item before you is to amend the pilot program that was initiated about this time last year and extend it. This kind of started as part of an NPDES order that triggered a number of projects and also a program change, which was the new private sewer lateral ordinance that was adopted in June 2018, and it went into effect August of 2018. What that did is, as you all know, it established some new triggers for requiring when a PSL, a private sewer lateral, is upgraded and brought to current standard. Here you'll see the 4 bulleted triggers. So when you do a building permit of 50K or more over 3 years, change of property ownership, and you have a sewage overflow, or you're triggered by a CIP project, in particular road paving. So the good news is, since August 2018, we have upgraded 445 or thereabouts private sewer laterals, which is great for the district. It's great for the environment. So that's definitely a benefit to the town and the district. But that also brings upon additional financial burdens to those people that are triggered. And so as part of that, your board approved 2 of these pilot programs to help assist them. One was what we're calling the PSL Grant Assistance Pilot Program. And that basically offers a 50% match up to $1,500 to just about anyone in the district that takes their non-standard PSL up to current standard, which includes a passing of a pressure test. And that's been very successful. And then second program is our lower lateral CIP pilot program. So just a quick refresher, what is the lower lateral? So that's the portion of the private sewer lateral that connects from the main to about, and I'll get into the specifics, behind the curb or behind the sidewalk, or thereabouts in between, depending on the circumstances. So, and we're opting, or what was approved in the prior pilot program was to include the lower lateral under certain circumstances. And here they are, the 3 criteria. So if it's within a sewer or paving CIP project limits, the majority of the sewer on that street is being rehabilitated, or for one of these other reasons, essentially it's in the best interest of the district for cost saving, it reduces impacts to the public and traffic. So as part of the May 2019 report, there was discussion that the possibility that if this was brought forward as a permanent action, there'd be an evaluation of fees that haven't been changed since 2010. They're also some of the lowest in the region. For that and other reasons, we'd like more time to evaluate whether this program becomes permanent. And so at this time, we're just asking for a 2-year extension, using the same overall funding limit of $1 million spread between the 2 programs. However, we are recommending a shift in some of the funding as we look ahead at some of the projects that are in design that we're planning to build. There is more of a need on the CIP lower lateral program than there is on the private sewer lateral assistance program. And so prior it was split $500K to each program, and we're actually recommending that the lower lateral CIP receive $700,000 each year, and the PSL assistance program receive $300K. And we think that's enough to satisfy the needs of the taxpayers or the ratepayers in the district. Something else we learned, it's very difficult to obtain a opt-out signature from over 100 residents tied to a CIP project. We had some last year that we tried to contact over 5 times. We tried multiple mailers, we tried knocking on doors, and Some were either traveling and away for many months, others just weren't interested in reading our documentation or having conversation. That coupled with the concept that really they're receiving an upgraded lower lateral with very little downside. In fact, I can't think of anyone last year that turned it down once they understood, what it was they were actually receiving. So we're recommending we flip that into an opt-out if you wish. Otherwise, the default would be that you're opted in. Staff will also analyze who has received, has brought their PSL up to standard recently, so we won't be fixing work that was recently completed and other things of that nature. And we've worked with the town attorney to provide the necessary language in our resolution to make sure that this is clean as far as a legal process. Secondly, we had some language in the last pilot program about the whereabouts of the termination of the lower lateral, and it said something like behind the sidewalk. But the question is, what happens when either you don't have sidewalk or you have this planter, which is actually a more optimum location. And so we've added clarification. Really, this location, if there is a planter, is the best spot unless you had some sort of cherished tree or plant or some other obstruction that did not allow you to put it there. Likewise, on the picture on the right, where the sidewalk is adjacent to the curb and gutter, you would want to put it just behind the sidewalk in that location. Obviously, you bring in plants and other obstructions. We would put it as close to these locations as possible within, practical and feasible as possible. There was a slight clarification on eligibility. We're recommending that anyone who receives either of these pilot program grant funds within the last 10 years not receive them again. Obviously, this is a new program, but should it move forward beyond those periods, that would be the criteria that we look toward. And then secondly, if they've passed a pressure test recently and we can verify that through our records, we wouldn't fix something that is like new and spend district funds on that. This is also a new one. We're recommending that fees be waived associated with upgrades that are tied or triggered by CIP projects. And that is different than, say someone who is purchasing a home or doing a remodel. I think there's kind of a inherent understanding that, as part of these upgrades that are voluntary, I might have to also upgrade some things along the way. This is different because, this kind of has the nature of you're sitting on your couch and you get a letter and it says you're going to have to come up with all this money to upgrade your system, and you hadn't been planning or budgeting for this in the past. So, we're kind of making that distinction, but that's part of what our amended request is as part of this new resolution. And that's it. Any questions?
Any questions from the board for RJ? One sec, hang on, I can't see you guys. All right, any questions? No, okay, great. We will open this up for public comment. Any members of the public who want to comment on this? Oh, Teresa, yeah.
I just have, there was one minor, it's a typo on the resolution. It is section 2 of the resolution, paragraph A, where it lists the amount of funding per year for the PSL program. It should be $300,000 per fiscal year, not $700,000. So I would request that any motion that gets made be made with that correction.
Great. I'm sorry, where was that again?
It is on the resolution. So in the operative part of the resolution, in section 2, which is entitled Continuation of the PSL Pilot Program, Paragraph A, the second line would be 300,000, not 700,000.
Oh, okay.
Per fiscal year.
My second line says 500,000. Am I looking at the wrong document? I don't know.
You're looking at the resolution?
Yeah. Yeah, Resolution 2, 2019.
No, I think this is.
I'm on attachment 2. It's attachment 1, isn't it?
Hang on.
Yeah, we attached the prior resolution, I think, just for background.
Wait. Oh, I see. Okay, I was on the prior resolution.
It is attachment 2, which is resolution
okay,
4, 2020.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. Good catch, Teresa. Okay, we'll open this up for public comment. Roy has his hand up.
Okay, before I make the comment on the pilot program, which I think is a good thing, going back to the indexing and minutes. Hey, get the minutes. I can't see my notes. Okay, thank you. Getting back to the indexing of videotaping, when the current resolution was passed for the PSL, I went through every minute of the town council and the sanitary district to look at information about private laterals, and I used indexing and looking up words like PSL, lateral, sewer, and that sort of thing. So indexing is very important. But getting back to the PSL pilot program, it really needs to be the rule rather than just a pilot. It's got to be the primary means of replacing the laterals. And it needs to be done in a wide area managed by Sanitary District 2 because it's so much more significantly cost effective than the one-offs, an individual property owner having to do the dig and all of that stuff. So just some rough numbers using the 445 PSLs that have been changed over in the last 2 years. Average cost, as best as I could calculate right now, it's about $11,000 for that whole replacement. Includes digging the streets and all the running the lines and that sort of thing. So that's almost $5 million that have been spent by those individual property owners. If it was done under a CIP program, upper lateral would have been replaced for $2,500 or less. It's a little over $1 million. You're talking about property owners having to spend almost $4 million. Now, if we take the 445 of the total PSLs, which as best as I have in information was about $6,000, it's going to take 27 years to complete the PSL projects. It's way too long. So I really urge the board to look at making the CIP the rule and replacing as many lines as you can because you're saving the homeowners tens of millions of dollars. And I don't object paying more for the annual fees for the Sanitary District 2. There haven't been any fee increases as far as I know for what, about the last 10 years? Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, the Sanitary District 2 can do all of the mains and the lower laterals and also combining the upper laterals in a project much more cost effectively than individuals can, and you can do it a lot sooner.
Okay, thank you, Roy. There are no other hands up at this time. Rebecca, do we have any emailed public comment?
We have received no emailed public comments.
Okay, then we will bring it back to the board for discussion. Who would like to start off? David?
Could I ask, please, if Mr. Wolford's comment could be interpreted to be in support of RJ's suggestion that we move to a opt-out system as opposed to opt-in so that we really have an opportunity to do more work all at once? Otherwise, I'm not sure how we operationalize Mr. Wolford's comment.
I'm happy to speak to a couple points. I don't know that I caught your question precisely, but I'll just dive in. So on a typical private sewer lateral, and think of your subdivisions from Marina Village and Mariner Cove to El Camino or Madera Garden, I think you're actually looking at 6 to 8 million on a typical full install for a PSL. That's kind of what we've been seeing. Also want to add that we've got an upcoming master plan that was included in the budget that we're planning on doing this next fiscal year, or at least doing the bulk of it. And I think that'll really speak to the overall needs of the district and how investing in the PSL program should be prioritized. So I do think there was some merit to Mr. Wolford's comments. I think we might want to wait for that document before we make any of those kind of long-range decisions. And also we're learning, you know, we learned a good amount as far as the first year of this pilot program. And I think there's probably going to be additional lessons learned as we move forward. And so I think extending the pilot program is the appropriate thing at this time. And, you know, it'll give us more information to make those longer range decisions down the road.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? Yeah, Bob?
Yeah, I've actually, in my job, I've attended more sewer lateral inspections than I can remember in the last 10 years. I know that I'm on a first name basis with the guys at Pipe Spy. So the average cost of these is easily $10,000. So I think, you know, this program is great. I think we need to do it. I think looking forward to what we can do in the future is really good because, you know, the real reason for this is environmental. This keeps rainwater and stuff out of the bay from going through the sewer system and having to be treated at CMSA, as I'm sure you know, Eli. And I think this is a really important program, so I would love to see us move forward with this because this is a real expense for homeowners, especially when you're talking to homeowners who are living on a fixed income and trying to get their house ready to put on the market, and you know they're suddenly faced with a massive expense to try to fix the sewer lateral. Any help we can give them to help make that happen, I think, is really good. So I think this is a really good program. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments? I'll just say I agree with Bob 100%, and I agree with David that I like that what we're kind of doing is continuing to work towards figuring out how we can do these in the most efficient way possible, in the most cost-effective way possible. And I just want to commend staff for not only putting this program out there in the first place to help residents, but for then not just leaving it there as what it was, but actually going back and figuring out how to tailor it to make it even more effective and even more helpful to our residents. I think that's exactly what government should be doing, and you guys are doing it. So thank you and great work. And with that, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Fred.
And I second the motion.
Can we get those that one edit right in there? To 2A, changing the first dollar figure in 2A from 700,000 to 300,000. Section 2A of the resolution. Okay, there's the motion. We have a second? Okay.
Second.
Great. Rebecca, can we get a vote, please?
Board Member Casissa?
Yes.
Board Member Lee?
Yes.
Board Member Ravazio?
Yes.
Board Vice President Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Board President Beckman?
Yes. All right. Are there any district manager or board member reports? Nope. Okay, great. Then we are adjourned. All right, everyone. Have a great night.
We sing happy birthday to David.
Thank you.
We can't even do the Pledge of Allegiance over Zoom. I don't know how we're going to do happy birthday. Actually, have you ever been on if you've ever done it on Zoom, it's the worst. It's unbearable.
Thank you,
But
Fred.
happy birthday, David.
It's
Happy
a big
birthday,
one. Thank you.
David.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
All right, take care, guys.
Bye-bye.